makes me happier than to introduce first-time guests here, new companies to the Techstrong team. And so join me in welcoming Ronit Belson and Erez Rusovsky. Ronit and Erez are the two co-founders. Ronit is the CEO, Erez is the CPO, Chief Product Officer, for a company called Sawmills. Don't worry if you haven't heard of them, we're going to tell you all about. Ronit, Erez, welcome. Welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Alan.
My pleasure. So I usually start these off, especially when I have founders and co-founders. I want our audience to understand a little bit about the people they're talking to. What drove them? Founding a company is not something you do lightly. You don't wake up in the middle of the night and say, I'll found a company tomorrow. No, there's a passion driving you. You feel that you're doing something that's important. It may not be important for world peace or something, but for a certain group of people, whatever, it'll be important. Erez, I know you've done this before.
Yeah.
Right? Let's start with you and then we'll go to Ronit. But let's start with you. Give us a little bit of your background and kind of what was your passion for Sawmills?
Yeah. So, thanks, Alan. First of all, I have a technical background, used to do system DevOps for a while. Then had my own company in the dev tool space. We did feature flagging as a service, scaled that and sold that company. And then, I was working at the acquiring companies at the time called CloudBees. They did CI/CD and building pipelines, CI/CD pipelines. And I think one of the things I kept on seeing with Ronit, which is a good friend that worked with me in the past, we kept seeing a lot of problems around observability and around the amounts of data that is generated for observability, right? And when I saw this internally, I saw this in the past from past experience, and I saw how that data is basically unmanaged and just creates a lot of downstream pain for both the engineers in DevOps, SRE. So I kept seeing this and encountering this across my career. And it was always there, but I didn't do anything with it until we did something with it. So I think that's kind of the background for me.
I love it. Ronit, you heard what Erez says. Let's hear a little bit about your journey and your passion.
Sure. So before starting Sawmills together with Erez, by the way, we have a third co-founder, our CTO, was VP of Engineering at New Relic, in charge of their AI ops. So we had three co-founders. Before starting Sawmills, I was actually at a company called Tricentis. I was a GM.
I know it well.
So I was a GM of the testing business unit, got there via acquisition. They acquired the previous company I was COO of. I've done it a few times. I was actually 3 times COO of companies that were acquired, one by Splunk, one by Tricentis, one by CloudBees, where I worked with Erez. And I actually started my career many years ago in the observability space before it was called observability. So I've seen the...
APM.
Observability is not new. It's just a new name. No. A little bit of different technology, but the idea of needing to solve observability issues have been around. And what drove me to do it is, as Erez said, we figure out that there is a huge problem in the DevOps engineering space around the amount of data that is created today. And that was, when we started to talk about it, was 2 years ago. This is pre-agents. And even at that time, pre-AI, even at that time, the amount of data that were sent to observability solutions were growing exponentially. That had consequences, 2 main consequences. The first one that we kept hearing is cost. The cost of the observability solution is just getting out of control, and it is directly impacted by the amount of data that is being sent to it. The second, at the end of the day, junk in, junk out. If you send a lot of data that you don't need, it's much harder to make sense out of that data. That was prior to AI. Think of the last 12 months, where a lot of the code is written by coding agents, by AI. Observability, telemetry is an afterthought. That means that the data that is sent today is not only growing exponentially, I don't know what's more than exponentially, but whatever it is, it's what's going on today. A lot of data sent to the observability solution without being managed, low quality, incredibly high cost. And this is the problem that we came to solve. We want to give control. We wanted to give, this is what we're doing, give control back to the DevOps, back to the developers over the amount of data and the quality of the telemetry data, if that makes sense. Long answer.
Makes perfect sense. No, it makes perfect sense. You know what? Maybe their parents are watching. The third co-founder's name, you might as well mention him. What's their name? Excuse me?
Amir Jacoby.
Amir Jacoby. Okay. Well, we mentioned him. Okay. Look, I hear what you're saying, right? This has been a problem in observability when we called it APM, right? First the question was, can we capture everything? And then when we figured that out, it was, do we want to capture everything or do we want to store everything? We can't afford it. And so what do we keep? What do we not keep? What do we act upon? What do we not act upon? Now, AI represents maybe our best bet at being smart about observability, but at the same time, AI has created new attack surfaces, new vectors, new challenges that it seems that only observability is going to be able to help us meet these new challenges, these new threats. So it's like a double-edged, it's not even double-edged because it's a double, like a squared, if you will, right? Problem squared. We got all these new attacks that we're going to use or potentially could use. We need observability to help fight against them and understand it. But observability is out of control. We need to use AI to get more of a handle on observability. And it sounds to me that that intersection is where Sawmills lives.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Observability is going to change. Observability is critical when it comes to AI, when you have so much new code that it's being written. At the same time, you need to make sure that that data that is sent to observability solutions is optimized. The optimization of that data when it comes to AI just becomes so much more important. And that is what we are doing, right? We've done it before AI and we're doing it now. And what we are now launching is actually the first agentic telemetry management platform.
I love it. I love it.
So as you said, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go on.
No, go.
As you said, AI also gives us the opportunity to finally, with a real agent, manage that telemetry data in a way that we weren't able to do before. It's continuous optimization, it's with reasoning, it's with loop back from what you actually see in production happening back into the way the code is written, the way the CI is guarding it, is analyzing it, and then back into production, if that makes sense.
It makes to me, it makes perfect sense. So look, we've been here at Techstrong, we've been going through our own agentic experiments, let's say over the last month or two. And this open core thing is just got us all crazy, right? We're all experimenting. I have all these digital coworkers now. Everybody here is making their own digital coworkers. The security issues we worry about, right? And everything else, it's a new thing, but it seems like security issues or not, the train is leaving the station. We all recognize now the power of these agents and what they could do. And it almost seems like it's made for the observability problem, right? Because observability when the sun is out only isn't observability. It's only partial. right?
Mhm.
In order for observability to be used in the way we want to use it here, this new kind of security posture, it almost by definition has to be continuous. It has to be, 24/7, never down.
Mhm.
And to me, how do you do that without some sort of agentic processes, right? Um, but let's, Erez, we haven't heard from you as much since the beginning, but challenges building this. You got to build a secure agent. It's got to work. It's got to be always on, right? Mission
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not
So
like A/B testing.
no, so listen, I think agents today have gone a long way. If we talked a year ago, it would be still, something that everybody wants, but not everybody has. I think today we are finally at the point where there's real agents. Not everybody has them, but we're happy that we've built one. Obviously security is a concern. But I think, listen, what we're excited about is the value, right? Being able to have an agent that has an objective, that is looking at optimization, both from a cost and quality perspective, all the way from the pipeline to the code level, and optimizes continuously. But the interesting thing is that, listen, there's still a human in the loop, right? So in many cases, you would need to notify somebody on some change and to ask for approval and to follow up with an engineer, or to follow up with the SRE team, or to follow up with the DevOps teams. That is all today possible, right? You could converse with the agent. You could ask the questions if you have a question. And so I think the whole operation of managing something, and we're focused on telemetry data. I think that is coming to light. That is the real change. You've mentioned having a co-worker or a digital team member. That's exactly what we're aiming for. That's exactly what we're seeing. And that team member could automate a lot of the stuff that was the grunt work, the tedious work that nobody wanted to do and was always neglected. Right now, an agent could do that for you in a better way, as you pointed out, always on, always connected, always looking at things.
Good. Ronit, I'm sure you've spoken to many customers, potential customers. What are you hearing from them? Are they ready to accept an agentic solution to their observability woes?
Right. So I can talk about the telemetry, right? The telemetry that feeds the observability. And I can talk about what I see around AI. I think at this point, they all understand that they need a solution. They all understand the value of AI. And I think the openness to use an agent to solve the problems because of the size of the problems is there. Was it there a year ago? Not so much. I think companies at that point were dabbing a little bit with AI. 6 months ago, they were dabbing with AI. At this point, they're very open and in a sense are almost looking for a solution that will do it in an agentic way rather than in an LLM asking question or manual way.
I don't.
Problem in a sense. The problem is big enough. They look for a solution that will solve it.
Let me ask you, and I'll throw this at both of you. Whoever wants to answer can answer. One of the things we're seeing in the market is with the use of AI, I don't need to necessarily reuse open source components that I didn't write, I don't know is secure, what have you. If I wanted, I'd build it myself, in essence, right? We've seen the numbers speak for themselves. More people are just building what they want rather than downloading from a repo, from an OS component. Now observability, on the other hand, observability's been built on the back of Hotel, Prometheus, Grafana, some of these big open source projects that help, kind of even the playing field around observability and collecting telemetry. Is this agentic platform have OS under the covers, so to speak, or you're following the new model, which is I build it all bespoke?
Erez, you can answer that.
It's a little technical.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think Ronit can answer this as well. But I'll say two things. A, yes, we have an open source component. We are leveraging the open telemetry collector as a way to basically collect and stream telemetry data. So that is important on that side of the house. I also think that again, what we're building is augmenting observability. At the end of the day, as we all think, it doesn't matter if you use an open source solution or a commercial solution. The belief system is that a lot of the observability workflow would be agentic, right? And in order for that to work, you have to have great data. You have to have high quality data at the right places at the right time. So what we're focusing on is getting that data to the highest quality and at the lower cost, right? Finding all the gaps, removing all the noise, right? And so we care less about if you're using an open source solution or using a commercial solution. That's kind of where we're focusing.
Got it. So when we use the word platform, generally with a platform, there's an ecosystem, right? I realize this is brand new. You're a fairly new company, just came out of stealth a year ago. The platform itself is new, but is the plan to be able to support sort of third-party partners who would leverage the platform, maybe have their own agents, use your own agents, APIs, MCPs?
Absolutely. Yes. We do have MCP, we do have CLI, that's part of our launch. And I think the new world, you have to live within a very robust and dynamic ecosystem. I think that the world of I, me, and I'm not talking to everyone, and you need to use it my way or the highway is gone. You're there to help customers. If the customer want to use our platform and our agent with the agent interface, that's great. If they want to use it with an agent that they built, that's great as well. So our belief is that we need to be as open as possible to what fits the customer's model, not our model. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'll say about ecosystem, we are not replacing observability solution. We are integrating with whatever that you use. You want to continue using your Datadog as your observability solution, that's great. New Relic, that's great. Grafana, that's great. Whatever shipper you have on the other side, whatever agent sends the data, that's great as well. We are there to optimize the data, as what Erez said, for cost and quality. Continue using whatever you use. So we are a strong believer in ecosystem and being a good player within that ecosystem.
I love it. That's great. You almost answered my next question, which is, some observability used to be something we observed after an application was deployed, right? But over the last few years, a lot of the action in the observability space has been on pre-deployment observability. It looks, from what I'm reading and hearing and seeing, that you have a big focus on that pre-deployment. But by leveraging things like a New Relic or Datadog or what have you, it's really let's call it a 360-degree view of observability. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing to mention over here, and this is something that we're launching now, which is kind of new. One of the things we understood, if you look at developers today, their field has completely changed, right? Most of the code being written today is written by agent, right? It's not the autocomplete anymore. It's agents doing the whole thing, right? And so observability or instrumentation is being neglected, right? I don't know how the agent instrumented my code. I don't know if it's sending the right metrics. I don't know if it's adding the right logs to the code base, if it's following the standard. So what we are doing is that we've added the capability of our agent to also review the code from an instrumentation lens. So now we can look at the code and understand, is telemetry written correctly? We we close the loop because we see also what's being printed in production or when the application is running. And so we know how to stream that knowledge, that learning back to the agent that can actually improve how telemetry is instrumented in the code base. And so to your point, we're moving the instrumentation or the idea around observability to the left, to the engineering side, to the actual writing of the code side, because that is going to be a major gap looking forward at how applications are written.
Agreed. Guys, we're almost out of time. I don't think we mentioned the website. Is it sawmills.ai? AI. Okay. SAWMILL. That's just the way you'll see it on your screen on the bottom third. Sawmills.ai, the agentic telemetry management platform. It's brand new, just coming out. Go check it out. Ronit, Erez, I wish you both the best of luck. Come back, keep us posted on this. I'm sure we'll be hearing more. Congratulations.
Thanks, Alan.
Alan.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, Sawmills here on Techstrong TV. That's sawmills.ai. Go check it out. The world's first agentic telemetry management platform. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be back on Techstrong TV in a moment.
Hello, I'm Scott Robaum with Solutional, and I'm here today with Ahmed Abutaleb of Nokia Enterprise IT to talk about some of the very interesting network migration issues that they've been through over the last year or so. I'm not going to steal any of Ahmed's thunder, and we'll let him speak to it all. Ahmed, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Abutaleb. I'm the lead architect for the on-prem data centers inside Nokia IT. And I had the privilege, of course, of doing this exciting transformation where we moved a lot of data centers from legacy to modern techniques, modern data centers, migrating from different types of vendors to Nokia equipment, migrating from Nokia to Nokia. So those 2 or 2.5 years have been very exciting for me. I've been working in data centers for a long time, but this is like something I've never seen before. So
Awesome.
I'm excited to share this with you.
Yeah, no, happy to dive into this. And let's just set the context for people who aren't aware. You know, Nokia is just this tiny little company with just a few hundred users on the network, right?
Yeah, sure. We've got like 88,000 people. Yes.
Yeah. And a wide diversity of different departments and functions that you support. You have manufacturing operations that you have to support, of course, finance, accounting, HR, all sorts of, software developers, people in sales, people in marketing. Probably one of the most complex enterprise network environments that I've run into in my time in networking. How about you?
I think it's different types. There is a variety of applications that are very sensitive to disruptions,
Sure.
applications that are, factories, that could, a brief disruption could throw off the software of the factory. It has to be restarted, things like that. So it's very critical, very interesting, and the different variety. Some are very sensitive to delays. Some are very sensitive to outages. It's very interesting.
So you've given a little hint at kind of the first category of things that we want to talk about. Some of the pain points and the issues that you had to think about and had to say, what does my next gen network architecture need to fix? So what were some of those original pain points? If you think back, 2.5 years now to when you actually started down this path, what were some of the motivators that got you thinking about we need to go to new network infrastructure and new tooling?
Well, when I started really with Nokia IT, I saw all sorts of problems. I wasn't in the IT world. I was in the product world, and everything there was like more rosy. You're dealing with labs, concepts, architectures, playbooks,
Sure.
blueprints. But when you move to IT, it really hits the real world. part. And there I was exposed to all sorts of problems. We have our operational model, where we have to do a lot of intensive work, very resource intensive. We really don't know what is deployed, if what we intended to deploy is actually on the network or not. We don't have a feedback loop from the actual deployment to the intent. We had operational problems where the operations team were dealing with different types of toolings that don't cooperate with each other, that don't tell you really what is wrong with your network at any time. You have to do a lot of brain power and manual correlation. Also, our designs. It was a lot. Let's go to the lab. Let's try and simulate as much as possible production. Let's bring in, expensive equipment, expensive load balancers, firewalls, etc., into the lab just to test something small, because we're worried that if we go in production, it will have a very negative effect. So lots of variety like that, and also human aspect of the thing. It's like I think of it as a journey. This is not only a technical part.
Sure.
People are excited about automation, AI, and stuff like that, and they want to be part of it. They want to get exposed to it, but not just for the sake of AI and automation, but where it makes sense for us. And so all that made us think of completely re-architecting the way we do everything.
Sure.
From design to implementation to operations. Everything was completely different.
Did you see any, not to be overly reductionistic, but any specific pain points? Was there overload due to alarms or tickets generated? Were there communication issues on some of these complex troubleshooting issues? Does anything specific come to mind there?
Of course, I'm not an operations team. I'm in design team. So
Sure.
I want to comment on the design part, because that affected me the most.
Sure.
Is when, for example, when I got exposed and we had a network audit and we found all sorts of problems. The thing is, we really don't know if what we're dealing with is a design intent, or it is intended to be like this, or it drifted through time to be like this.
Sure.
And so the common thing is, I always was told, go back, let's see the designer that did it 2 years ago, and let's talk to him. Let's talk to him. Is it really this or not? So it wasn't very consistent and drifting, and we don't know if reality is good or bad. So all sorts of problems there in the design and also in the implementation. Lots of people doing CLI where one node has a completely different configuration than another, not
Sure.
completely, but drifted away from another, and they should be identical, and we never understood why.
Huh.
So I really thought about this when starting the architecture, that consistency has to be there.
Yeah.
Automate, something at a higher level should be, the engineer shouldn't be going to that low of a level to deal with things. They should be dealing with a high level, and let some tooling, some automation, some templating do the real hard work, the consistency check work.
Sure.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I want to introduce you to Zach Hanif. I hope I got that right, Zach, yeah?
You did indeed. It's great to meet you, Alan.
Nice to meet you, Zach, and thank you for joining us here on Techstrong TV. Zach, by the way, is head of AI, ML, and data. That's a lot.
Yeah,
There's
a lot that goes in there, but they all work together. Yep.
Yeah, well, it does. And as I mentioned, at Twilio, a company we've been following a long time here at Techstrong. Zach, that is a lot. You don't look that old. You've been doing this, though, a while. Tell us, how did you wind up here? What's your path been like?
So, one, I don't look that old because, fortunately, the camera I have lies a great deal on my behalf.
got
so
a good camera.
that's always the big benefit.
A good camera. That's a lesson out there for you people watching. A good camera always helps. But go ahead.
Two, My path has gotten me here because ever since the early days of my career, the thing I knew I wanted to do was work with data and AI and ML at large scales. It's been my entire career from the beginning. I have been blessed with the ability to do that across a wide number of domains. Everything from internet security to anti-money laundering to fraud. I've worked in financial institutions, fintech. I've worked for general purpose, large-scale internet companies, all sorts of great stuff, right? I'm very grateful to be here at Twilio right now. You get a huge amount of perspective and challenge inside of a space that up until this point I haven't spent a lot of time with, and it's a wonderful opportunity to work directly with customers.
Love it. I love it. And you know what? Sometimes just things just line up right. What a great time for you personally with your background to be living right now in what this kind of revolution that we're living through in terms of AI and everything that goes with it.
The last 15 years have been very exciting. That's absolutely true.
Absolutely. Good for you, man. Talk to us about Twilio. How long you been at Twilio?
So, excuse me. So I'm coming up just on about 2 years now, having been at Twilio. So not all that long as far as we kind of measure time and material like that. But the company's gone through like a multitude of evolutions, and it really feels like it's on a incredible path forward over the having been built up for the last couple of years and looking into the future. So most people, I think, actually have interacted with Twilio without knowing it. One of the things I like to say is that if you've gotten a text message from like your dentist or from any kind of brand that you've worked with, if you've gotten an email from an organization that you're subscribed to a mailing list on, statistically, it's pretty likely that within the last week, you've gotten a couple of messages sent by someone who you want to interact with using Twilio. Twilio's one of the leading, if not the leading, companies that build out the capability to do communication between organizations and their audiences through channels, SMS, email, whole bunch of them. What most people don't realize is that we have an incredible amount of capability in the area of customer engagement in general and have been building that out quietly for the last couple of years. So Twilio's got this great union of things between the knowledge of what our customers want to communicate with their audiences about and how they're doing that communication. And so that means we've got the ability to have a very, very powerful customer engagement platform that allows our customers to have direct personal relationships with their audiences, no matter where those audiences are and no matter how those audiences want to be communicated with. And it gives us the ability to make sure that as time goes on, and this is what drew me to Twilio, that puts us on a position where we can add intelligence to functionally every interaction and trust to every part of a customer's journey. It's an incredibly large lever that honestly most people never even think about, but has a huge ability to kind of influence how we do business on a day-to-day basis.
I love it. Man, like I said, what a great time to just be alive though, huh?
Yeah.
Zach, of course, as you mentioned, all the great things here about Twilio, but for people, we only have 15 minutes, and Twilio is a company that's this wide, wider, in terms of all the great things it does. But for people who want to just, they don't have time right now, but go to Twilio.com, what would you suggest is like the best path for people to kind of digest all of the great things Twilio does?
So I would go to the website, to be perfectly honest. And the
Zach,
company...
I lost you there. I'm not sure.
Oh, still with me?
Okay, back. You're back.
There we go.
Okay.
One, I'd go to the website.
Excuse me, 1 second.
No,
Paul,
no.
just make a note. I lost sound there for a second. You're going to have an edit. Okay. Go ahead, Zach. I'm going to count you down. 3, 2, 1.
So I'd tell people if they want to engage with the company, you probably go to the website first, right? Twilio has been, since its foundation, a developer-friendly, developer-centric firm that makes all of our capabilities available over APIs. And that focus on accessibility shows up through all of our documentation and all of our work. We've got a pretty extensive blog. We've got a bunch of material that's available. So if you want to start engaging, I would tell you to go there. The second thing that I would do is say it is incredibly easy and incredibly accessible to just start working with the tools. Entry is very easy. It's very accessible to play with. But most importantly, if you have someone or something you want to be able to communicate with through multiple channels, or you want to have a better understanding about how your audiences are currently engaging with your content, Twilio is a place to be.
Love it. Very cool. Zach, if you don't mind, I want to segue or pivot into a new launch from Twilio here. It's called A2H, Agent to Human. This is an open source protocol. Everybody loves open source, right? A spec that provides a single channel agnostic audible surface for agents to communicate with the human principles. All right, I read the press release part of it. Talk plain English for us here, Zach, like we're Gen AI people.
Last year has been the big drive where using LLMs, building agents, and leveraging those agents has become more available, not just to those of us kind of in the industry, but to the general public, right? You're seeing that takeoff happen. One of the things that's happening right now is because agents represent a new interface, a new way of interacting between humans and humans and humans and their computers, right? We're all starting to explore a little bit more. How do we actually drive that interaction? What are the things that are available to us where it wasn't there before? If you remember back, right, when computers started, like we're going back to the 50s here, right? You interacted with these things with punch cards and actual physical levers and lights that you could see on a machine that was the size of a wall. Over time, we started to get CRT monitors. First, you effectively had just basic lines, dots, the outlines of a shape. And now, right now, I'm talking to you on a screen that's got, 8,000 pixels or whatever the actual value is. But like we have rich content and media that we can engage with natively, right? We engage with things with a mouse. There are keyboards all over the place. We have different ways of engaging. Okay. So with the agentic kind of push that we're starting to see now, everyone's seeing this new technology and asking themselves, is there a different way that we can interface with the computer? Can I talk to it, for example? Is there a way that I can just type plain text and get that information back? Maybe I don't even need to intentionally communicate with it at all. I can just simply have a camera or something display what I'm doing, and the machine will infer what I want to do next. Lots of different ways that people are exploring with this. A2H, when you get right down to it, right, is a way that standardizes how an AI agent communicates with and requests permission to do things from humans. And it's that last part that's really important right now. How do you get consent from humans if the agent wants to do something and it's not sure if it has permission? Historically, inside of, functionally all of computing, our ability to give the computer a permission has been very coarse. You can read something, you can write to something, or you could execute it, run it. But as we're getting into a space where agentic judgment is starting to allow a much larger realm of what a machine can do, those previous kind of like three-part models start breaking down. And so A2H gives us, standardizes how computers talk to us when they're asking for more context, when they're asking for consent, and when they're giving us information, right? A2H, we hope, right, is the start of a kind of like interaction mechanism or a contract for this kind of new agentic era we're finding ourselves in, right? Other protocols think about how agents talk to each other, or how they talk to data or other technical resources. A2H puts that in the context of can we get a single standardized, ideally channel agnostic surface, could be via voice, it could be via text, doesn't matter what it is, right, for how these agents talk to us. One of the big underpinnings of it, I think I mentioned this before, is that you want that mechanism to drive that positive consent. Hi, I need to do something. Am I able to? It's unclear based on the way you've told me to work before. You want that to be auditable. You want it to be secure. You want it to be very clear so that way when an agent takes an action, the human who is accountable for that action doesn't wake up the next day and realize that they have something that they need to regret. Does that make sense, Alan?
It makes total sense to me, but this is my life these days, Zach. So, you're talking my language. No pun
Effectively,
intended.
it just standardizes the way you're able to speak to an agent and tell it exactly what you want it to do. And it allows the agent to standardize how it gets clarification about, hey, is this actually what you meant? And am I allowed to do something during moments of ambiguity?
Now, this is an open source spec.
Yes.
Yeah. What exactly does that mean? Like, is it, you put it out on GitHub, people could use it without Twilio, but I assume there's some hooks for Twilio that can be used if you want.
Absolutely. So it's not just available for people to use without Twilio. We hope people use it independent of their use of Twilio, right? We also hope, and this is part of why we have an open spec, we want commentary on it. What are the things that we may not have anticipated? What are the things that you've seen that cause us to begin to adjust this? This is an interface thing, right? It's a new way that humans interact with something. And that means that we interact both from an objective sense, hey, was this correct? And a subjective sense, hey, did that feel like a natural interaction? Does this feel natural for us, or did it feel weird and stilted and therefore it doesn't feel good to me, right? So we want to get that direct interaction there. Right? So when we think about it, both A2H, right, as well as the hooks that it has going back into Twilio, give us the ability to say, if this standard gets adoption, people are starting to look at it, we are adopting it as well, and we're able to drive that forward as a part of what we do. So in the event that you have something that says, hey, I need to make a phone call, do I have the authorization of the user to make that phone call? That's the mechanism that we're going to be able to use for some of our own agentic capabilities, should users leverage that.
Got it. Now, look, I'm playing with a lot of agentic stuff myself. My team is here. We've hooked up to some services that let us talk to an agent and it talks back to us, like voice to text kind of stuff, if you will. But this sounds like something more than that. Right? It's not just reading words or hearing words and converting it to text. There's as you called hooks, right? Into making things happen. When you say it's a specification, what do I got to do to get this working? Like, okay, this sounds great. We'd like to use it.
Yeah.
I go to GitHub, I look up A to H from Twilio, I find it. What do I need to make it work?
Well, we're still in the very early days of the specification. So we've only just published it. Things that are starting to happen now are the development of libraries that make the adoption of this easier if you're a developer. We're starting to look with and partner with teams who want to implement the specification inside of their own agentic frameworks. Right. And of course, we're consistently bringing in and accepting more commentary on the spec as well. So we're still in those very early stages where there's kind of this forming action around, hey, have we proposed something that's resonating with the larger community as a whole? We think so, right? Has that proposal demonstrated that it's relatively easy to begin to implement? And for areas where we have easy to implement libraries, things that let you get started a little bit faster, a little bit more rapidly, are we watching that adoption and finding that people are able to go places with it and kind of bring their visions to life using that technology? So it's a little bit of all three of those things. If you ask me again that question in 6 months, my answer is going to be different to you because we'll have gotten through that initial phase of everyone kind of wrapping their heads around and beginning to interact for the first time with a lot of these capabilities.
Very cool. Very cool. People watching out here, we've got developers, we've got geeks, as I call them. They're my people. What do you want to tell them, Zach? How do they get involved? How do they help? What do they, well, and help themselves as well, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. So I think the first message that I'd probably want to send is the realization that we came to that drove the creation of this specification. And it's this, right? Conversation plus consent equals trust. And we came to the realization that with even no matter how powerful the technology is, without a verifiable trail of human approvals and authorizations, right, agent autonomy is going to hit a ceiling in terms of how it gets adopted, right? Think about it this way. You wouldn't trust something that isn't you with your credit card if there wasn't a way for that thing to call you up and say, hey, I'm about to do something with your money. It's a little ambiguous at the moment. Do you authorize this? You wouldn't trust unless something was able to say, hey, here's a log of all the purchases that I have made. You've already authorized them. We're both confident in that. But now you have a clear record of when it was you versus when it was something acting on your behalf and with your permissions. That communication plus consent and the resultant trust that you get out of that is, we believe, a big part of what needs to exist to be able to unlock more and more things in the agentic world, not just from the perspective of the early adopters and the believers, but from general people on the street who otherwise would have a trust issue because they are not as deep inside of the space as we are. We've opted in when you think about it that way. For anyone who comes on your show, for yourself, for people who look like me, right? And so our premise here, both in A2H and in the larger perspective of kind of where Twilio is we want to give our customers two fundamental things. One, a unified platform that they can use to accomplish their goals. If your goal involves communication, and tell me if I don't think there's any that don't, right? But if your goal involves communication or taking action, right, we want to give you a simple way of being able to do that. And A2H gives us the ability through a protocol to say, hey, if this gets traction and this is the direction that we all go in, or it evolves into something that becomes that, right, then it just happens naturally. That fluidity is important. But the second thing that's really important to us here is to make sure that you have that trust. Trust is the thing that lets everything function in a civilized world with a minimum of friction. If we trust the interactions that we're having, if we know, for example, that, hey, if somebody is engaging with my agent, we can identify both my agent positively as something acting on my behalf, and we can identify the counterparty, the person interacting with it, as a clear, distinct, and known entity, there's trust there. If I'm a customer and I'm using an agent and I know and I can track that I'm getting value from that use, there's trust there. All of that is absolutely critical. And so our goal with A2H is to give us the ability and to just deepen Twilio's commitment to making sure that we have low friction, easily accessible capabilities in a platform that stretches across the entire life cycle of how an individual might want to communicate with their audience and better understand that audience's needs, desires, and next steps, while making sure that everyone inside of that three-part chain can trust their individual counterparties. We think it's powerful.
I think it is too, man. I think it is too. Very cool. Zach, we're about out of time.
Fantastic.
You wouldn't happen to have the GitHub address where people can go find this, do you?
We absolutely do. It'd be a little weird for me to recite the whole GitHub repo
No, I know,
verbally, but we'll strip
sometimes
it down
you don't
to you.
have it off the top of your head, but it's github.com/something. Just, you know what? We'll put it in the notes on this, but just make a note. If you could have your people send it over to us, we'll put it in there.
You got it. Absolutely.
Sound good?
Yes,
All
it
right.
does.
Hey, man, I'm sure you're excited. our people here are so excited. I got people spending weekends in the office because they're working on their agentic stuff. I'm sure you're seeing and hearing this too. It's an exciting time to be here.
It really is.
Keep up the great work. Come back and keep us posted, okay?
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Zach Hanif, head of AI, ML, and data over at Twilio here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more. Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, CEO of Techstrong. Welcome. Welcome to this very special virtual event that we are producing in partnership with our friends at Microsoft. The event is titled Unlocking the Future of Agentic Experiences. And it's going to be a series of videos in this virtual event that you're going to be able to take a look at and interact maybe with some of the analysts and speakers here. I really think you're going to enjoy and get a lot out of these videos and this event, and look forward to hearing your feedback. I'd like to kick things off with our keynote. And it's our keynote because I think we've got two terrific speakers in this one. And it's around the future of apps, right? And it features Futurum CEO and principal analyst Daniel Newman. If you've ever seen Daniel on any of the many TV shows or conferences that he keynotes, you know what a dynamic thought leader he is. I think you'll enjoy it. And Daniel is going to be speaking with none other than Ryan Cunningham. Ryan, of course, is corporate VP for the Power Platform at Microsoft. And, Ryan is going to share with Daniel and with you the all-up vision, the all-around vision for Power Platform. We're going to connect the dots between apps, agents, and interfaces, right? Ryan and with Daniel are going to illustrate how Microsoft is leading automation in this AI era. He's going to articulate how Microsoft is enabling every organization to build, govern, and scale intelligent solutions with unmatched speed and trust, driving the future of agentic apps. It's a great discussion, and I think it's a great learning experience. So here's Daniel Newman and Ryan Cunningham.
Alan, thanks so much for that introduction. And to introduce myself, I'm Daniel Newman, CEO of Futurum. Very excited to be here today with all of you, and even more excited to introduce my guest for this conversation, Ryan Cunningham from Microsoft. Ryan, why don't you say hello to everybody and give a little bit of background on the work you do at Microsoft?
Thank you, Daniel. It's awesome to be here with everybody today. So I'm Ryan. I'm the Corporate Vice President for Power Platform here at Microsoft. So look after all the teams of product people and engineers and designers that are building really our low-code application platform and the future of where that is going. Really excited to talk to you about that today.
Ryan, I've been working with and around your team for many years. As an analyst, it's been great to follow. Of course, the change that's been going on in this market is extraordinary. And I think that everyone out there is gonna leave this conversation knowing a little bit more. And hopefully maybe you'll give us a little bit of that secret sauce about all the stuff Microsoft's doing. Nothing too secret, though. You know how that goes.
Oh, I know.
So let's start big. When we talk about the future of apps, connecting agents, interfaces, applications, what is the kind of the North Star for Microsoft? What are you guys heading towards here?
Yeah. Look, it's a crazy time to be alive in a business application platform environment, right? Because this whole world is being turned upside down in actually two dimensions at the same time. One is how we build software, radically changing in a world of agents and vibe coding and everything that is filling up our LinkedIn feeds as technology professionals. What's really interesting right now is the dramatic expansion in efficacy of what I can build and the dramatic expansion of who can participate at the same time.
you have to be evolving the platform even more and even more quickly to get them what they need and what they're trying to do to accomplish the future that they're trying to build.
Yeah, 100%. And, I would say to even build on your last comment, because it's relevant here, it's not just an opportunity for more people to tinker and build things. It's actually really an imperative. Like if we're really going to accept the premise that every company that wasn't born yesterday is operating inefficiently and needs to rapidly advance in a world of agents, then the expertise you need is not just the AI technology expertise. You actually need to go get all of the process expertise. All the humans who know what it really means to run a more efficient HR department or finance department or whatever it is, they're sitting with a real job in that department today. You got to go figure out, how do I harness that expertise and bring those tools right to the point where the process is actually happening today. And that's where you need a higher abstraction platform that has agents built into it that help do the coding, that help do the work. Microsoft does have some really unique approaches in this space. And particularly if you look at this broader world of how software is getting built and code generation and agent swarms and every other term we're coming up with right now, where we're really focused right now, particularly in the space of business applications and productivity, is really make that relevant to the way companies run and operate. We're not out there to serve any possible whim of any possible developer on the planet. There's lots of great tools for that. Microsoft makes some of them in other places. But here we're really focused on the core operating system of a company. And by that, I don't mean Windows. I mean sort of all the business applications, business processes, specialist teams of people that today make a company tick.
We're seeing consolidation in this era. Customers have a ton of choice.
Yep.
Everyone kind of says, use our agent thing.
Right.
What we're going to want to see is, the orchestration is going to be super important. And then, of course, the speed, flexibility, access to all the tools, data, cloud. And of course, Microsoft's in a very small group of companies that has pretty much all of those things.
Right.
Not the only, but one of a very small number. Yep. And I think that makes you competitive. I want to go to the pragmatic side, because a lot of the viewers here are probably thinking about, how do I do this? How do we do this in our firm? We hear some of those stats about AI ROI in the enterprise, and let's just say that I'm an absolute believer, but I do think there's some hurdles. What are those kind of key enablers you're seeing, fundamental enablers enterprises need to get right now to make sure that those POCs and those production AI projects start to work and really show value?
Yeah, we're seeing customers adopt exactly the mentality you're talking about. Not just how do I run the current process faster, but what if I fundamentally changed the process itself to really great effect. We've shared some stories of retailers that are starting to use agents and apps and automation together to totally change how they do things like fraud detection and even refunds and returns management. If I go contact an online retailer and say I want a refund, traditionally that's a human going and vetting, is that a real customer? Did they buy something, or is this fraud? Does it meet our return policy? Which is, by the way, usually like a 50-page PDF that changes once a quarter. And then do I want to issue the refund, or can I save them as a customer? And that's super slow. It's super inefficient, and it's really expensive, and often it's outsourced to vendors. Can I go implement an agent that does that instantaneously, or at least does major parts of it instantaneously? Really starts to change my operating and my risk profile and my customer relationships. And so, even in use cases like that, starting to see, millions of dollars of value unlocked really quickly, and just better customer satisfaction. Actually, the balance of value is really shifting towards that process expertise. And I think part of the challenge, though, is just, very few people with real jobs woke up this morning and said, God, I want to build a business application, or I want to automate a process. That's just not a thing that happens to most regular people. But a whole lot of people woke up this morning and said, man, this part of my job sucks. That could be better. I wish we didn't have to burn so much time doing X, right? And really harnessing that energy, that value, those skills and those people, and bringing great tools to them. That's part of the whole thesis behind why a platform is critical right now. What does it mean to totally change that interface into a human and agent collaboration space? What does it mean to go see the activity of what agents are doing on your behalf when they need your input.
Let's talk a little bit about Plan Designer.
Yeah.
You know, we go from manual to automated to, to agentic level orchestration, which is great. One of the key things too is going to be trust. We got to trust our systems. We got to be sure that, the agent workflows we're building, that they're inspected, that they're constantly modified to be sure that they're right, that they're traceable. Like, talk a little bit about kind of how Plan Designer can help companies, because that's a lot of work, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You can automate or streamline some of that out of the process.
Yeah, well, look, for folks out there listening that haven't experienced plans in Power Apps, it's worth trying out. Just go to powerapps.com. You can try it today. But what it really is a different kind of AI-centric development experience. You go type into that box a business problem. We do not assume that you just want us to spit out 1,000 lines of JavaScript that you need an app. Like a lot of vibe coding platforms today. We actually do what a real software team would do. In fact, we've built in a digital software team. We've trained a requirements agent, a process agent, a data agent, a solution architect agent. It's a highly collaborative environment. This is not a sort of throw a paragraph over the fence and watch magic happen. It's really sort of training and teaching people with process expertise how to think like software architects and solution architects so that they can know up ahead of time, why do I want AI to do certain things? Where do I want it to work? How do I want it to interface with humans? And that's really the foundation of that trust in a system.
Have you seen some examples out there of Plan Designer being sort of delivering promise? Because it sounds super optimistic. Are people using this?
Oh, 100%. We have started to see really interesting sort of challenges thrown at it. We have customers in highly regulated financial services context that are taking decades of old homegrown, non-compliant software that was built over, whether it's, hacked in Excel or built one-off, and sort of saying, can I use this to rapidly modernize what I had before in a way where, traditionally going and turning all that old stuff into full stack software was just incredibly costly and cost prohibitive. Starting to bring those things into plans and generate a more robust plan for modern software, moving much faster. We've even seen huge extremes of that. I've seen a customer take 50-year-old COBOL code and just paste it into Plan Designer and say, what the heck is this program doing? And can you help me build a better version of it? And actually the results were pretty promising. So, people are getting really creative with, bring the problem, bring the challenge, bring, sort of the business area that you want to improve, and then start working with these agents and on this digital software team to design a solution.
So, we're doing all this work. We are trying to train people to think differently, remove constraints, whatever's possible. But the UI seems to be the next frontier. Like the old enterprise software, it's like, these are the things you can move and these are the things you can't, and what you can customize and here's what you can't, and here's your dashboard. And it's like, great. But in the future, right. I might just want to say, hey, Microsoft, whatever, this is what I want to know today. And then I want it to obviously learn based on my behavior over time what I want to know.
Right.
And then I want it to continuously, things like that. Like, how do you see being in this space so much, the kind of UI evolving?
Yeah. I think specifically chat as a UI is super compelling and natural for a lot of things. I do not believe that we're going to go regress 40 years of UI innovation and go all back to chat in the command line, though. Like, there's a lot of things for which text is actually a terrible modality, in which, just paragraphs are not great. And I think there's a more underlying thing here that you're touching on, which is a lot of traditional experiences, whether it's text-based or visual, assume a human shows up knowing an intent, right? As opposed to, an agent being really proactive and taking care of something for me or pushing me an update or a notification when I need to know it. And so I think those experiences start to evolve a lot. What gets really interesting is where they meet, and we really see a lot of this, task-based data entry, repetitive stuff increasingly getting delegated to agents on your team. But that means you'll need to work with that team in a totally different way, right? And where a traditional CRM system or HR system or whatever, pick your business application, was, previously, like we talked about, people typing into boxes and then other people viewing reports. what does it mean to totally change that interface into a human and agent collaboration space? What does it mean to go see the activity of what agents are doing on your behalf when they need your input? When they're blocked on something, or they've noticed a trend, or there's a form they tried to fill out but didn't complete. Then that's an important meeting space to go have experiences and user experiences. And a lot of times those do need to be structured in a visual way. A lot of times they could happen, ephemerally or with a chat message. But how do you route people to the right place at the right time? We're working across all of those fronts. That's why we have a robust set of tools in Copilot Studio for building the agent part of all of those things. It's why we have a ton of evolution in Power Apps, sort of becoming this new agent-centric experience where I can see a feed of that activity. I can have agents help me do the work in the applications. And those two worlds will just continue to evolve together as we start to bring things into the future.
Yeah, so you heard me talk a little bit earlier, Ryan, about governance. Governance is part of the critical constraint and one of the things that differentiates software, right? The reason we can't just use OpenAI for everything would be because it doesn't know how to handle the data. Be like, oh, let me talk, help me do a job offer, or help me do a compliant healthcare notice to somebody. Like, it doesn't know how to do that.
Right.
So building applications that do know how to do that is the key. You got to build it with, of course, we want to go fast.
Right.
So fast is the new rule.
Right.
But the trust and scale are the other words. I know you often use these words, but what do you think, and where are companies sort of struggling with governance and scale here with automation, and kind of how do you think what you're building in agent oversight can help them?
Yeah. So I'd say there's a couple dimensions to governance and scale. There's the breadth dimension. We have a whole lot more people who now can build a whole lot more things. How do I make sure that all that stays on the straight and narrow when I can't centrally top-down code review every single thing that every single person and agent is doing? And then there's sort of depth scale. When I do want to roll out a mission-critical solution to 100,000 employees that has AI in it, how do I make sure that that AI is not just functioning, but actually continuing to get better every single day? The good news is we're not inventing any of that from scratch. Breadth scale and depth scale were a challenge in the first generation of Power Platform. And something that we've built a ton of capability into the platform over the last couple of years to really tackle at huge scale. And we call that the managed platform set of capabilities. And within it, there is managed governance, managed security, managed operations for lifecycle, ALM management, stuff like that, and managed availability even. How do I go ensure high availability, run disaster recovery drills for critical workloads? All of that is built into solutions baked on the Power Platform. And all of that value accrues to this next generation of components being built as well. An agent built in Copilot Studio benefits from all of those managed capabilities. A new app built in Power Apps with intelligent capabilities in it benefits from that entire stack. And so that's why, you start to see even highly regulated financial services firms, government agencies, et cetera, really trusting Microsoft here as opposed to a 20-person startup that was founded yesterday, to really take the bet on standardizing for this segment of software. Then you get into the operational oversight. Okay, I have agents doing work. How do I have humans managing the work of those agents? That's not a developer role anymore. That's really an operational role. What does it mean to be an agent manager or an agent boss in a claims department at an insurance company or in a supply chain operation? That's where we need these new interfaces, and that's what Power Apps is building in with concepts like the agent feed. How do I build a purpose-built oversight experience for really high volume activity of agents?
This is one of those things that, right, there's so much doubt across the industry about being able to do this in a sort of, when you give up the human in the loop, or even just have one maybe guiding, but you're moving so fast. It's like, are they safe? Are they auditable? Because when you're in a business, everything you do
100%.
has to be traceable and trackable.
Yep.
Is it predictable, the outcome? Like,
Right.
hey, you're going to have an agent interfacing with your customers. Or you're going to have an agent doing a bunch of accounting work, which, by the way, it's like a spiral. One mistake, and it's just,
Sure.
you know how that goes.
Yep.
Like, how are you guys overcoming that doubt, you know, through the guardrails you're putting up, through the oversight, the accountability that you're kind of baking into your platform? Because I think you get over that hurdle, Ryan, we move a lot faster.
You know, I think what's interesting here is actually a lot of our customers have had to build these systems already. You know, a lot of our customers already operate critical processes across massive employee bases and even larger vendor teams that operate at arm's length already today, right? And we've already had to go build in a world of a whole lot of variability of who's doing a task. How do you create an audit trail? How do you create rules? How do you create data policies? How do you create oversight? A lot of those concepts exist today because there is variability in the human system, right? And so a lot of the way we approach this, okay, how do you adapt those existing concepts, policies, features, capabilities? How do you adapt that to a world where it's humans and agents doing the work? And what are the sort of incremental, you know, sort of 10% shifts that you need to make in those systems to accommodate agents, but not completely, you know, pave them and rebuild them from scratch, right? Because a lot of these sort of trust concepts or zero trust concepts in a security concept are already built into the system. And so there's a ton of work we're doing there in the managed platform, in you know, a lot of the ways that you know, a lot of the Microsoft security governance and oversight concepts apply to agents. And that's, again, one of the benefits of building on a mature platform and a mature system in Microsoft is, you know, we're not having to recreate all that stuff from scratch like a point solution startup would have to do.
Yeah. So the last thing, just on specifically on security. Security is a super hot topic.
Yep.
What do the customers, how do you want them to think about the approach? Because in the end, like, you can get it all governed and right, but you have to keep your doors closed, locked, and you know, that's an increasingly large problem. AI is as much enabling it as it is fixing it.
Right. Well, look, I mean, we could probably spend an entire hour on security and threat model approaches in the AI era. It is absolutely critical, and like any security challenge, there is no silver bullet. You know, every customer needs to have a defense in depth strategy and needs to think about, what am I doing from a data security perspective? What am I doing from an exfiltration perspective? What am I doing from an access perspective? You know, the good news is we have a lot of that built into the platform today. You know, even a customer building their first Copilot Studio agent and using the managed Power Platform to roll it out, we'll see a security score in the Power Platform Admin Center. We'll see AI-driven recommendations about what to do to improve that security score. You know, it has a whole bunch of capabilities in there that go all the way to operate this in the cloud, but with a private VNet, with your own managed encryption keys. You know, again, we have a lot of highly regulated, very security conscious customers that are working with the platform today. I would say, though, to zoom way out and look at that, and maybe connect it to some of the rest of the conversation we've had, it is absolutely risky to go too fast. It is also very risky to go too slow. You know, and the rest of the world is evolving, including threat actors and competitors, right? And so the cost of standing still is probably the most costly position to be in.
So let me, you know, as an analyst, I have to ask you, because I've got a few things. But what kind of, in this whole evolution, this exciting moment for the future of apps and automation and agents, like, what's kind of keeping you up at night? The biggest concerns that you see out there, and then what are the kind of upsides for you? Like, what do you most kind of think could be the biggest surprise into the future? Give us that big visionary moment here, Ryan, to take us home.
Look, I think I'll do that in reverse order. I think there's a ton to be excited about right now. And, you know, I think there's just so much potential and creativity that we can still unlock. One of the things that has always been special about Power Platform and the community that's formed around it, you know, which is a a huge diverse mix of people with, 20, 30 years of deep software expertise, all the way up to people who have never touched a line of C# or .NET code in their life. What unites that community is this sense of, we can make something better. This can be better. Let's do it better. And I feel like we're at the precipice of just blowing a huge lid off of the ceiling of what you can do there. And there's a whole lot to be excited about. You joke about a night job. I stayed up last night vibing a Power App that's just a Tetris game because it was awesome and fun and so much faster to create it than it would have been in the last generation of the technology. And I think that's a tiny, tiny microcosm of, go take that creative energy and apply it to everything that's inefficient about every aspect of every customer organization today. We're really standing on the precipice of completely rewiring how companies work, and doing it with people who have deep expertise in that process and a deep desire to make it better. And that's just incredibly exciting to me in this moment. And then to flip it around, okay, so what stands in the way of that? It really is all about speed and pace of iteration. And really it's about time to wrong. There's so much that we need to go invent and co-invent with customers and experiment with, and try, and nobody out there is perfect right now. What will define winners and losers for technology companies, for customers, for operations is how fast can you be wrong, and then how fast can you get less wrong and more right. So that's the journey we're on. That's the hill we're climbing. But it's just a super exciting time to go think about what the top of the mountain can be.
Ryan, this was a lot of fun. It was a great conversation. Appreciate you sharing a little bit about where all of this is heading. There's so much potential for companies to really start reimagining and realize just how big of a leap forward we are having right now with AI, with agentic, and the work that you're doing in Power Platform. So Ryan, thank you so much.
100%. Really, really enjoyed the conversation, Daniel. Thank you for the time.
Everything about the way we work is changing very quickly, thanks to the advancements in applications and, of course, agents, automation, and what interfaces may look like in the future are all going to continue to change. And they're going to enable and they're going to power businesses to be more efficient and, of course, to be more productive. It was a great conversation over the last hour. We really did reflect across not just Power Platform and how they're thinking, how Microsoft is thinking about building its future, but really about how businesses should be thinking about developing their future, removing constraints, being able to look at problems in new ways, and then being able to apply software, and then being able to utilize resources in new ways that can deliver more value to your business and, of course, to the customers that you serve. And this is not going to be easy. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some effort, but it is something that can be done today, and companies can start to extract value right now. And moving quickly is going to be more and more important. That's something I'm seeing as an analyst, and that was clearly something that Ryan had seen as well. We talk a lot about that, is the customers that are moving fast are going to be the customers that get the biggest results and, of course, are able to benefit the most from those efforts. And lastly, we still have to keep all of those considerations that have existed with enterprise applications, with software that runs our businesses. And that's going to be the governance, that's going to be the controls, that's going to be security. And that, of course, is going to be putting people in the right roles and enabling them to do the work. All those things remain similar, but of course with a new bend. We're going to upskill the talent. We're going to think about problems in new ways. We're going to move more efficiently. And together, we're going to drive the future. Great conversation. Appreciate everybody spending the hour with me. See you all soon.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Agents of Dev podcast. I'm Mitch Ashley, one of your co-hosts, along with my friend and co-host and colleague, Brad Shimon. Welcome, Brad. Good to be chatting today again and again.
Hey there, Mitch. Good to see you. It's a nice, almost spring-like day, one might say, at least in terms of the calendar. So I'm going with that.
In Boston, there's almost a nice spring day. You mean you only have to do one shoveling duty
for the day? Is that what that means?
Yes, that is precisely what that means.
But this winter it does. This is the hottest winter on record in Colorado since like 93 years ago, or some absurd number. We don't have any precipitation to speak of.
I worry
Just
about
a
the
little bit,
snowpack
but
in the Rocky Mountains. I really do. Yeah.
it's very low. Yeah, we need to get dumped on, and I mean snow. But in the mountains, particularly, it doesn't matter if it comes in Denver as much. But good stuff. Well, that's our weather report for today.
Good. It's always good to keep track, I say.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to catch up. So let's jump right into our first segment here. And I think you had a few things you wanted to chat about on the call out. So why don't you start?
Yeah, the call out for me this week is an announcement that may have gone under the radar, and it shouldn't. Last week I think it's last week. Depends on when this is going out, but I know for sure it's out. And that is IBM and their DB2 database, which is a very storied database. That is
I remember important. When it came out. I was an early user of DB2 for sure. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. It's like so straightforward. I really appreciated that about it. So on March 5th, they will have had launched their DB2 Genius Hub, which is a step or a stepping stone toward full automation, but they're not pretending to have full automation of the DB2 database. So all of you DBAs out there, rest easy. It's not meant to displace you. It is really they have 5 tiers that they are objectives, steps, if you will, that they want to go for, and they're really launching this with a modicum of what I would call pragmatic autonomy, meaning it's completely in the human's hands. It is based upon their very extensive knowledge of DB2 installations over the course of just a few years to help you, for example, go from what might be many hours of root cause analysis to basically finding out what's wrong in a matter of moments. And that's a lofty goal. And if you can do that without increasing risk or introducing risk, then my hat is off to you. And I think that they're going to do it with this. I think that they have the skills. They have been working toward this for some time now across all of their portfolio, but particularly focused on DB2 here. I feel like IBM is, moving toward what Oracle initially had the great idea of with their autonomous database, and that is a database that, doesn't take an army to just keep the thing running.
Oh yeah.
Because right now, if you talk to a data professional, they're like, I very much would love to have a stratum of data without the data management. I just want the data. I want it to be accessible. I want it to be clean. I want it to work. I don't want the overhead. So if they could do it, I would love that.
Well, I have to pay homage to Chris Date and EF Cod and all the kind of early the relational gods, if you will. I first remember, I still remember, third normal form, so help me God, all these kind of funny terms.
Well, and that was the problem with, Oracle Autonomous Database initially was people, if you want to do this, you need to sort of have your act together, and not every company does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a big change, but so can you kind of put in summarize, like, what does it mean when we have a DB2 that's autonomous? What does that mean? It's like going to the store to buy groceries. It's up to buying a new car for you, or is it like re-indexing itself and correcting broken pointers and references and things like that?
So the way it's going to launch, it isn't going to sort of ascertain which groceries you need and then go buy the groceries. It's going to basically, be with you as you are shopping at the store and say, "Hey, Brad, it looks like they're out of your favorite bread. Might I suggest aisle 3 because there's an option over here." So it's very much in the control of the DBA. To basically set the tone, to decide what they want to do, and then shepherd, which is a key word for us for this year, to shepherd that process so that they have trust in the outcome.
So when you're walking down, I mean, it's literally use case, you're walking down the aisle store and go, dang, I don't have any of the bread that I like. And it says, by the way, it's on the end cap on aisle 4. Just if you go back there, you'll find it because they always put everything in 2 different places, right? So
They do. Yep.
the mysteries of the world. Well, that, it's amazing, to have a career that spans, the introduction to DB2 and, to where we are now, with AI and, oh my God, it's, what a
Seems like it was
thought.
just yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just yesterday. I was re-indexing those files, fixing those broken references, referential integrity, all of that good kind of stuff.
Yeah. And,
Well, yeah,
and that's what this
it's
proposes to do, is fix
yeah.
things like that, to make that something you don't have to pain over every day. It's something you just say, there's a problem. Please fix it.
Interesting. How do you think IBM is addressing the accountability, the trust issue? Now we're dealing with data. You don't mess around with data. Find out kind of thing. F around
Yeah.
and find out. What did you do? Mess with the database.
Right. Do not mess with databases. Yeah, I think that it's reflected in their rollout plan. So the March 5th rollout is, as I was mentioning, something that is just a baby step toward level 5, which is full autonomy. Wherein the database would say, I need to apply this security patch. The shard I have for this region is going to get oversized in 30 days or tomorrow. Therefore, I will, redo that. Or my index is out of date. I need to update it. I will do that. That's level 5. This is very much a tool that is trained on their knowledge base, their institutional knowledge of DB2 installations. And that's a big deal. And I feel like that's an area of IP that we're going to see increasingly valued within our industry. So those, that institutional knowledge, the domain expertise, if you will, and what that means for software that we rely on every day. So I think they're taking the right approach to it. They have the right foundation. They have a much more pragmatic, as I said, approach to doing this. So I have high hopes for them with this endeavor.
It's a theme because my call out is about a couple of things. One is, of all things to go viral, if you go viral on LinkedIn, is a post about a report that he did of Anthropic calling out IBM, saying, "Yeah, we don't need you. We can replace all your IBM COBOL for you. You don't need IBM." And
Yeah.
and that's like, to me, that's like saying we don't need developers anymore. Everything's going to be in the cloud. Blockchain's going to replace everything. How many times do we do this? The next thing will be the savior
Every
of
year.
everything else, and nothing will exist after this gets done. We're doing the same thing with AI. So, I'm a pragmatist, not a skeptic, but a pragmatist, but also like a realist. I like to make it happen. Anyway, the point being is, so I wrote, I kind of watched this happen. I thought this will die down. Well, it didn't. It kept going, and IBM countered and said, yeah, baloney. Let's talk about this. So, speaking of DB2 and all those things, one of the things, if you've been in IT for a while, you may not have called it modernization, but we went through these series of re-engineering, redesigning, creating the next generation of whatever apps you work in, claims processing, billing, banking, whatever business applications. And sometimes it was upgrading to a new database technology. Sometimes just replacing it, because like I worked in telecom and a lot of systems came from Belco, which is old Bell Labs. And people were like, this is great. We've run this way for 25 years, but we need something more modern. Let's go do it. Every one of those projects virtually fails because it is such
Inertia?
a monumentous scope. Yeah, it is just, and I made up this axiom of never be the first or the second project manager on any modernization project, because the first one, the expectations are so wildly out of scope, they immediately fail. So it must be a leadership problem. The second one comes in, gets things kind of back on track, sort of going, but not quite enough to make everybody happy. And so it must be a leadership problem. And then, third one, Brad or Mitch shows up and said, okay, I'll help you. We'll get you back going. And we were able to build up enough of the problems that got solved and fix the things that need go. And
so what you're saying
now.
what you're saying, Mitch, is that for all the project managers that get fired, as we go down that slope, if you will, the amount of debt that they inherit decreases.
That's right.
It is so you really want to find yourself at that optimal spot on that slope of decreasing debt and inertia that you want to tackle
Well,
for
I live in
a new
Colorado.
job.
It's a lot easier to ski downhill than it is uphill. So,
Unless you're on a ski lift, then it's pretty easy.
unless you're on a ski lift and you enjoy cross country, which I don't.
Yeah, nobody does.
So I wrote my own. I can't sit on the sidelines any longer. I'm like, let's stop. That's this whole. You're going to rewrite all my COBOL. Okay, writing the code is that big of the problem. It's all of the. Well, what's the business process? While you're rebuilding it, you're going to make a bunch of changes. Well, what's the architecture of what you built, and how does it really function? And do those people still exist? So to your point, by the way, my post went viral and it's had like over 40,000 views on it. And, once in a while things get up into that number on my LinkedIn, not very often, but for me, that's a big deal. But it's to your point, it's that institutional knowledge. Yes, that AI can both help ingest and become part of it, its skills, that doesn't make up for the intuition, the knowledge, I can recognize when this is a problem that other people can't.
Yeah.
Because we've lived this experience, either living with the application, living with re-engineering or modernization or whatever it might be. So it really takes a team. It takes people that are good in business process re-engineering and rethinking what we're doing, being able to do change management. Because while you're changing, you're modernizing, guess what? Other people want a bunch of other changes too. So a lot of things pile on at the same time. So it isn't just throw it at Anthropic's or anybody else's model and now you've got your problem solved. It takes a lot of elements to successfully complete a modernization project. So that was my soapbox. And people are jumping in. Yeah.
As an accelerationist, clearly, you would say, or an accelerationist would say, well, you just set up a number of adversarial AIs that can serve that same role for human experience. And I agree. I agree that could help and would help and is very helpful to use. But I think we're seeing right now play out in real time this rediscovery of the value of that human insight and experience that you're talking about, and you can see that reflected in companies like IBM, who I think in the last week started rehiring or just started hiring newbies. Let's bring some people in on the ground floor and show them how this works. It
I
might
learned
help
a new
us.
term, EICs, early in career. EIC, that's the name for
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. So we're licks.
You lay in your, or won't leave our career, or whatever it might be. And that's the perfect point, because again, it's sort of the over-rotation on what technology will do and how quickly it will do it. Yes, someday we'll have agents that are adversarial that'll say, yeah, but it'll be the yeah, but agents. Yeah, but what about this? How do we solve this problem? That's not going to work. All those kind of things that the engineering mindset is, I don't say yes until I've eliminated all the no's, right? Okay, once I know these problems will be solved, then I'll say that's the right answer. It's kind of that mentality. And yeah, we'll get there. But the wrong thing to do is what we're doing, which is we'd over-rotate and say, well, AI is going to solve everything for us. Pick whatever the next generation of technology is. That's going to be the thing that replaces everything else. It just doesn't happen that way. And yes, this time's different. There's a lot of things that are different about it. But inertia is a big thing. I don't think it's going to solve all today's problems tomorrow. Several tomorrows from now it will.
I mean, we have to learn that the hard way as a species, time and again. Just ask anyone from quantum. We know that it's going to happen, but how many times have we over-rotated on that? It's the nature.
It'll be next
of
year. Next year.
Right.
No, it's 10 years. No, which is it? Next year or 10 years? Where are we?
Well, it's a generational thing, unfortunately. The Thomas Kuhn wrote a book called oh gosh, now I'm just blanking on it. It's the revolutions in science are very much episodic in terms of they only change every 60 or some odd years. Why does what is that number 60? Why is that magical? Because that's how long average, industrialized people live, and it is very true. You have to have a changing of the guard for real change to happen.
So I did write another paper another report talking about the depletion of the talent hiring supply chain. This junior developer.
Yep.
Just like last year, we didn't need any any developers at all because AI would do it all. This year, all we're developing tools for is developers, frankly. And now we're starting to realize, well, wait a second, that all is not going to happen so fast. We're not going to have all that stuff in place with AI. We still need people, and the role may change. How they develop and grow them may change. And there was a paper that came out in Communications of ACM. If you're not an ACM member, it's the Society for Computer Management. That talked about. It was actually two people from Microsoft in their, I think it was developer relations, and also one of their development organizations in Azure, a CTO person. They came up with a model. It's called a preceptor model, which essentially is, what is sort of this mentorship? It's almost like peer programming. One senior person and how many junior people can that senior person, I would say, mentor, but work with, and then someone else who's helping, both making sure that those people get the well-rounded experiences, but not just on old ways of doing things, new ways of doing things too. So they accelerate and become senior engineers more quickly, but it's based on not just their own experience, which is all valuable. It's also based on what they learn on the job and they learn from more senior people. And so I wrote a paper about that and said, by the way, we're rotating on this again too. So let's step back for a moment and really see what makes sense to do.
Well, it's important to remind ourselves of that. And as you just mentioned, I think that one of the most, real accelerationist ideas out there is the truth that any discovery is built on every discovery made prior to that. And that you're not just throwing out the old and starting over. That does not happen. That does not work. So I'm glad to see companies like IBM trying to reestablish that cadence of, new people coming in and learning, and then building on that knowledge.
Yeah, and Microsoft too. I think they're a little more visible, but I think for IBM, but Microsoft at Build last year was very clear in there. We're on this journey together with developers, right? You're not going away, neither are we. We are all builders, et cetera. So that kind of jumps to, if I can segue, one of the main topics that I wanted to talk about is I just released something called Observability Native. So let me step back for a moment. Some of the things that have changed about, yes, we're using agents to create software, and we're using AI in the development process. Stats from our research show 93% of organizations either are using, heavily rely upon, or considering. There's only about 30% considering out of that number using AI. And this is from last year, when a year ago, when it was maybe 40% of people were sort of somewhere in that mix. So in 1 year, it's doubled, more than
a big
doubled.
Jump.
It is. And the things that are different this time are we're using AI agents to build agents, right? So kind of ask the question, like, if we need to, the level of accountability we need to have for AI software, whether it's what's built or the software that builds what's built, is extremely important for getting AI into production, right? You're starting to hear about agent accountability as well as agent governance. You're starting to hear governance. You're hearing about agent behavior guardrails as well as security guardrails, et cetera. So there's a huge concern about, I'll do our experiments, but I'm not going to go full scale into production at an enterprise level unless I've got the ability to observe what's happening, know what's happening, and I have some accountability for why it happened. So that caused me to say, well, maybe it isn't tilting at windmills this time, but how do we get observability built into the whole process? And isn't that really going to be fundamentally necessary? How do you know why it built the software the way it built it and what caused it to an agent to go those directions? during the development process or revision or anywhere along the deployment process. So long story short, that's where the windup of why did I do this? I created this concept of observability native. It's not a term that's very commonly used, observability, and native are, but it kind of says it in the name, which is, think of it as 3D observability, not shift left. It's observability everywhere we're working on the specs and the planning stages of using AI in development all the way through into operations and the governance and the provenance and the agent behavior and the controllability of agents in production. And I think we're again, I don't think I'm tilting at windmills, if you're familiar with that terms, which is kind of like spitting in the wind, right? Like, yeah, good luck with that. I think we are at a time where, because we're using AI in the process and we have to secure AI and control it and hold it accountable while it's developing software, that you see vendors racing earlier into the life cycle to try to get observability and security and a number of products into the development cycle. Again, developers going away, but we sure are building a lot of tools for them, for somebody that's going away.
We should know what those tools are doing. It might be useful.
Right.
You know, it reminds me, Mitch. Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
please. I don't mean to hog the microphone, but I am hogging.
Well, I know you're excited about it, so I'm with you, because I am as well, man. And I see in our research this reflected as well on the data side. And but I'll get to that in a second. But what you reminded me of is the example we were giving for IBM earlier with just trying to do root cause analysis. If you only know the database and you're looking at problems that are happening in the database, like latency for a query, maybe it didn't happen in the database. Maybe it's in the front end library. Maybe it's at a gateway. Maybe it's your EC2 instance on AWS is down and you don't know it. If you don't have all those, if you don't have transparency and observability across all of those participants in that final outcome, you can't say with any level of assurity what's happening, let alone solving problems when they occur. So this idea of having observability native, it's like cloud native, but observability
there you
native.
go. Yes,
built for observability is critical, and it's we was one of the 2026 prognostications we had is that everything is going to be oriented around that FinOps idea of how do I control my spend. And you can't control your spend unless you have observability. You start with observability, and then you could just peak at FinOps down the road. But if you don't have that observability, it might as well be behind a wall or over the horizon.
Well, and it's a really good point, because a lot of what goes into software engineering, I call them engineering problems. When you're on a project, there's certain things you don't know how they're going to work. Problems you haven't figured out yet what you're going to do, whether you're using AI or not. And AI might help you solve that. But one of the factors is always, and how much is that going to cost? How many times am I calling the model per second? Right. So what's my credit card going to look like at the end of the month if you're on a personal plan, or what's my bill to the cloud provider, the model provider at the end of the month for my company? Because I made some choices that had huge implications on the financial end of it. And that's actually, so one of the stats from the researcher in software lifecycle engineering is AI-related areas, AI observability, agent observability, cost, FinOps of AI, are three of the four top things in AI related in the what am I looking for out of an observability solution, and not just in production, but in development. So, and that's gone from one thing in the top 10 about AI observability, mostly about automation, actually, from a year ago. So that's how quickly we've gone, well, wait a minute, here's all for it, but here's what we need to get this stuff into production.
It's kind of inevitable, isn't it? Because if you can collapse the time to value with agentic tooling, let's say you work at Anthropic and you decide, hey, let's make something called Claude Cowork, and you do that in under 10 days, you cannot tell me that you have, thought about or addressed all of the Rumsfeldian unknown unknowns that exist within that software. So it's a day 2 problem, but you need to build it on day 0, to anticipate it on day 0. And you do that by understanding how the thing works.
Well, that's a great segue, because in creating this idea, and observability natives, it's not a product, it's not a piece of software, it's not an open source project. It's really a reference model of how do we understand what's happening in the market, and who's addressing what problem, and what problems do we need to have addressed to put AI into production with full accountability at scale. So I just took the agent process of because it's non-deterministic, there's some special things we have to do. And if you think about what every agent does, just being real simple about it, and that's the purpose, is make it simple, right? I created this 4-step cycle, right? So the first one is intent. What's the goals of what the agent was trying to do? What was it told? What was it? What was the data? What was the prompt? Whatever it was that sparked this agent to consider taking an action. There's a reason why, and what was that reason? I want to know that, because then I can understand what it was trying to do, right? It's not like a piece of code. If we just look at the code and say, well, this is what this does. Well, that agent may change on every execution. So you've got to know about that. Second step is the reasoning. So in figuring out what it's going to do, how it's going to solve that problem or complete that task, what did it consider? Why did it decide that this is the path I'm going to go? Something in the goal, something in the response from an LLM, data, other information that it had. Maybe it's in the sol.md file of whatever operating system it's working in.
Pro tip, always review your sol.md file regularly. Same with your Claude MD, your agents MD. Don't just let that sit.
Exactly. Yes, that wasn't a made-up example. It's a real example, right? And then, speaking of which, the third step is, okay, what constraints were applied? Well, I had all these options, but those aren't practical. Those aren't doable. I'm not allowed to do those things. What guardrails am I operating within, and what was applied to it? So it also tells you the guardrails are working or not, right? And the fourth is what the outcome is. What happened? What is this cycle? And that's kind of the process every agent is going to go through. And you might say regular software does that too, but it's deterministic. You can look at the code to see what it's doing, right?
Very different.
So that's one element. And then I created these 7 principles, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but probably the main thing is treating agent telemetry as kind of a first-class signal all the way through the process from beginning to end, whether it's through the software to operations or it's through the cycle, intent through outcome. We have to have all of that to really have accountability. And we can. I think that's possible to do now because of how we're building AI software, agent software, and using agents to do it.
Can I ask, Mitch, do you think, so this is coming from a person who used to suffer through SNMP traps, trying to figure out why things broke.
Version 2 or version 3, but okay, SNMP 2 or 3. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, I can't even remember. But I've tried to put it behind me. So yeah, open telemetry, which I'm seeing show up quite a bit in agentic tooling right now. Do you think that is up to task to accomplish what you're describing? Do you think that it is something that is a standard that we can apply in every layer of that tool stack or value chain, whatever you want to call it, to accomplish this?
It definitely is a huge part of it. I don't think it's the only thing. And again, observability native isn't throwing out what we did with observability. It's like taking it to the next level. So, and this is already happening in the OTel community, where they are building the reference model for how AI data is shared, right? Building how do we manage agents as well as monitor, et cetera. And these are the vendors that are driving this effort primarily. And just like we talked about vendors rushing to be earlier in the development cycle that normally would be an operations tool, suddenly an observability tools like for developers, that's happening in the open standards as well. So I fully expect confident OTel community will be right there and a huge part of the solution, but we'll also see new innovations too. Maybe new open standards, maybe, of course, a lot of vendor innovations that happen with
you think
it
like
too.
edge cases to fill in gaps, things like that initially?
Things like that. Well, fill in gaps. I mean, because even with an open standard, it takes a while for that to get baked in, right? Vendors are going to come up with new ideas.
BSM.
Some things they'll
Yeah.
submit back to the Linux Foundation. They'll keep making products out of it. They'll get acquired. It gets put into larger company projects. They'll elevate it. It's that whole cycle will continue to happen. I think the main thing is the impetus, is the reason to do this sufficient with financial motivations to make this happen? And if you
Yeah.
believe that for AI agents to operate at scale in production, that you have to have this accountability in place, governance, security, guardrails, behavior, all these things. If you believe that's true, which I do, it won't be a perfect, but that is a huge requirement for enterprises. The industry responds. So I think that the things are lined up to move us forward towards having observability throughout the life cycle.
Yeah, I think the impetus is there, and just ask anyone who's using frontier models right now, API services. You're just one bad bill away from collapse. You're crushing your project because you just didn't know what it was doing, and it was doing something wrong.
Well, it's
Yeah.
sort of the like security people hate ephemeral things because like, well, what went away? What happened when it was here? That environment's gone. That serverless thing is gone. Do I have what I need to know what happened? And that's the problem we're solving. So I jumped in there. You were going to go somewhere next.
Oh, I was just going to complain more about inferencing, and I don't know if do you want to transfer to the drop section?
Yeah. Okay. It's
and we
time
can-
for the drop.
Okay, it's time for the drop.
Go for it, my friend.
Yes, I want to ask a question. Why is the inferencing? We have many choices now for hosting providers that are offering API services for frontier models. Take your pick. Give me GLM, whatever. And I want to understand why those are turning into Netflix. In what I mean by that is in terms of availability, performance, quality, everything is geared around optimizing the spend of that provider, not of me, the customer, and that upsets me. And this is like top to bottom. I'm not just talking about the neo clouds here. I'm as a user of a certain large hyperscalers generative model repository. It's been very frustrating over the last couple of weeks to see some like degradation in quality with 503 errors popping up day and night when you're like, why is this happening? And the Reddit sphere is like, well, that's just because nobody could use Anthropic now inside of their OpenClaw implementation, so they're just pinging this model to get whatever their email inbox is. So they're DDoSing this platform,
the next platform that will block OpenClaw.
It's just right. It's just a game that keeps past the hot potato, I guess, in a way. But it's not just that. It's not just the degradation. It's sometimes purposeful. If you think that OpenAI or Google or Anthropic or any of them are presenting consistently the exact same model with all the parameters available without quantization to everyone every hour of the day in the same way, you're kidding yourself. It is very much a game of optimization for them, and they have to, because these are precious dollars in terms of watts that are available to spend in each data center. And so I fear and I feel like we're sort of heading in this direction where you would have to have an uprising to demand an SLA from a provider, because they're like, well, you pay us $200 a month, but you might not get what you're paying for today. How can that
Now
be?
Just think if I had observability into what the agent's doing, trying to call those models.
As the consumer, yes, not as the provider, because they already got that.
Yeah. Well, it's, I don't know if this is an imperfect comparison, but it's kind of like broadband. Right. You have 1 gig at your house, not because you can run it at sustained 1 gig. full throttle all day, every day, 24/7, right? They
Yep.
design infrastructure to be oversubscribed, just like an airplane seat, right?
Correct.
They
Yeah.
oversubscribe those, they oversell them. And same thing with the models, right? For your $20, your $100, $200, whatever your subscription is, there's a certain amount of usage they're expecting you not to use, right? That you're going to be somewhere in the low or the middle, maybe the upper end sometimes, but you're not going to be running, redlining full throttle every month. And that's a lot of this. Well, OpenClaw when I push that way to the limit, maybe past it.
That's
And
past
that's
the
why
limit,
they
yeah.
throttle it back. Yeah. So they pushes it way beyond. And I go, well, wait a minute, hold on. That's $1,000 a month if you want to run at that speed. Or we'll just block it because we can't control it. It went viral too soon. So that's sort of the, when you're on the consumer end and the telecom side of it, you look at your bandwidth usage over time, and you look at the peaks and the valleys, and you look how much you're consuming. So when you're within
Right.
your
And you
SLI
provision
that they should be
for
meeting,
that.
right? Right.
Yep.
And that's what you expect. The other part of it, I was just talking with, speaking of junior engineers coming into our industry, I was just meeting with someone yesterday who was working on their own OpenClaw project, and they're like, well, how much do I budget? I mean, is it going to use all my tokens and my subscription, or what do I need to put in for the API? I said, those are all things. This is the plan part of, vibe coding or any kind of development is you need to ask and develop and work with AI to create a budget. I do this for all the
Yeah,
time. Like,
yeah.
okay, now how much is this going to cost? If I have this many companies coming in and this many orders and this many videos or whatever I'm doing, expect this kind of a load. Give me a cost and where the cost is and why that's going to cost that much. And then as we test it, how come my budget was like I wiped out my $20 in a day and a half? Hold on just a second. Where did that occur, right?
Well, right, and those are things that we can kind of control as creators. But when you have an asset that you rely upon for whatever what do you call it? I have an SLA that I want to adhere to for my customers. That's latency of no more than 2 milliseconds per query, for example. If I can't rely on the infrastructure behind that to provide that, if I'm paying for it, that's unnerving, annoying. I want inferencing to be more like critical infrastructure is my entire point of this rant. Is that I feel like we're turning it into Netflix sort of attention economy, and it shouldn't be that. It is critical infrastructure, and it needs to be something that you can count on as a creator and developer.
Yep. And when you get those edges, those hard boundaries of them not supposed to be there. I remember when I first started using AWS, the first week I got this message. I was asking for a whatever size survey. Well, we don't have any of those available. Like, hey, wait a minute. What happened to the Elastic Cloud that's infinitely available? And then I can get whatever I want when I need it. Oh, I guess it's not 100%. Right. There
Only
are
for this
limits.
T-shirt size.
Yes, come back in 30 minutes and try again. Right. That kind of an answer.
Exactly.
So I want the drop for me is, this is again kind of the evolution of where we're heading and why. Google came out with some announcements around their agent development kits. Yeah, sorry to stumble over that, but it's their SDK, if you will, for agents. And largely, ADK has been, here's the builder tools to build agents, but it suddenly took a different form in the last week or two, and that is, here's an ecosystem of things that are now available at the developer's fingertips: observability, security, operational environment, all these tick-offs of some open source things that it now supports and compatible with, but also commercial offerings. And it's gone from an SDK or an ADK, if you will, to kind of an execution environment that starts right in the developer's hands. That can do that. Much like what AWS did when you're using Kiro, you can say, and I want to deploy this on AWS. I can make that decision right in the developer's fingertips. So again, these things are pushing up earlier into the process. Those decisions can be made much, much earlier. But that, to me, is again, it's not about writing the code. It's those things that are really accelerator and are the multiplying factor of what's happening. We're going to see this more and more. I'm convinced.
I'm with you, man. You see it with like Databricks buying Neon because most of the provisioning of that database was by agent tools, not humans. And you want that stack, to be. I want my API to allow me to instantiate anything I need to support my solution without me having to, drop out, go do an integration, come back, and hope that it works. I love what Google's doing there.
It is. It's fascinating. And it hasn't gotten a ton of attention. You and I go, oh, wow, this is awesome, blah, blah, blah. But I think in the developer community, it definitely does. And, I look for, so what's the Microsoft response with their agent framework, SDK? What's the response from other technology providers, whether it's an Oracle or an IBM or everybody has their own IDE now, so they can put those things in their environment as well. IBM comes out with this thing that helps you with modernization because that's now at your fingertips, not just to analyze the code base, but process engineering or whatever it might be. I'm making that out. I'm not pre-announcing anything, but that I think is the stage we're at, is those accelerators are starting to take form and show us where the vendors are headed.
Sign of maturity. I think we're due. I think we deserve that for everything that's transpired since the end of 2022.
I agree. It's a lot of fun. Well, what do you so what are you working on these days? You mentioned the data, your survey data, your buyer information. Is that coming out soon?
Yeah,
or have you already
thanks for
dropped that
asking,
yet?
Mitch. I haven't. No. So we twice a year do a survey for my group. We do data intelligence, analytics, and infrastructure practitioners. So everybody who's dealing with the data side of things, and one of them. This is getting ready to go live probably in a week or two. I think when we finalize a survey, we have all the data and it makes sense. It's the one thing you can ask for, because for anyone who doesn't do this or hasn't done this, you have these panels and you have percentages that you target on a step-by-step basis when you do a survey, and you watch the numbers like a hawk for each one because you have your expectations. You think, oh, this is what it's going to do. And then if you start deviating from that median, as you go along, you start getting more and more nervous. Like either I had the absolute wrong ideas about this market, or, the data's bad, which is it. So thankfully I don't have to worry about either of those horns on the bull because it all makes sense. So at any rate, long story short, we were asking about observability as well, and amongst data professionals,
cool.
they overwhelmingly 66% said that they're increasing or accelerating dramatically their investment in this space, specific to the challenges of anything as basic as just setting up a data pipeline to orchestrating a complex agentic workflow. Doesn't matter. Across the board, everyone wants this. Everyone but 4%. 4% don't. And I want to understand them. I want to meet them. Like an
they're in a
ethnologist,
cabin
in
in
the
Montana,
fields.
off the grid. Is that 4%?
Right. Exactly. I want to understand them. I really do.
Well, that's fantastic, and thank you for asking that in your survey, in your buyer decision maker survey. Very, very perceptive, very insightful for you to ask that question, because that connects those dots, right? Observability is not a software lifecycle engineering unique thing. It's
the
across
whole,
board for all
everything.
Security, data, every part of it. And to that point, it's one of the things that's exciting about this time is DevOps elevated a lot of other practices. You saw kind of data start to come more into the development cycle, security,
Let's
a lot of
opsify.
things. Exactly. And AI is doing that, I think, even on a greater basis of kind of elevating all parts of what we do to say, okay, how's this part of the answer? What is the answer we need and what do we need it to do? So kudos to you. Excited. So we'll definitely talk about your data drop, your
Yes,
survey.
we can do. We might even bring slides
Charts.
Try something.
Not slides.
Sorry, charts, not slides. Yeah, charts on slides. That would show some of this. So yeah, stay tuned, everybody.
Oh, giddy. All the data wonks in the audience are like, ooh, great. Yeah, let's see some of that data.
Yeah, we're actually at Futurum. We're I think very transparent in not just the methodologies we use, but with the actual data itself. We feel very strongly that these are the value isn't just in the data; it's in the interpretation of the data, and that's where our value comes in. So we don't keep everything locked down. We open up a lot of what we do here. So I encourage you guys to check out the site and what Mitch and I are doing, and our colleagues as well, because they're all opsifying and finopsing and observabilitying their practices, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening right now.
There's a lot of treasure chests there, and we definitely let you see a good bit of them. There's still more. For people who are subscribers. So the thing that I'm just kicking off to preview a little bit, and you're a big part of helping me get this off the ground, is doing a Signal, our AI created report on agentic orchestration. So that'll be out in a couple months or so. And this is just coming around to do a refresh on the software development platforms, but I'm doing this one first. And first of all, massive kudos to you and the platform, the Futurum Intelligence Platform team, of how far this process has advanced in 6-ish months since I did. I was the unofficial guinea pig, the second one to do a Signal report. So I'm getting code drops from Brad.
You were that second manager that was hired.
Exactly. I'm like, don't change anything because it's going to change. So just kind of let it come, let it flow. Brad will say, oh, by the way, I already solved that. Here you go. Use this feature. All the undocumented things that aren't there. That's the fun
Here's
part
a new
of being
problem.
the early bird. Exactly. So, I was more using AI to tell me what this code does. So I understand, okay, that's how that happens. Okay, now I get it. Well, now it's all plug and play. It's gotten to a much easier, here's the things with the companies and products and some of the axioms and the announcements and data and information that we feed into AI to help come out with this product, this report. So I'm excited to do this. It's like doing it a whole new way. It's the same principles. Yeah. Same kind of effect that we're getting of what the output of is. But this will be on agentic orchestration. So a new space that we talk a lot about. Keith Kirkpatrick talks about it in his work. Yeah. You and I do. Nick Patience, and we all talk about this. So it's good to have kind of a starting place to look at agentic orchestration. So you can tell I'm excited about working on that too. Plus, this coming week, I'll be introducing a second framework called the Agent Control Plane framework.
Ooh, yes.
Which builds on Observability Native to say, okay, so once you can see this stuff, how do you make it accountable? How do you run it and observe it and govern it once you've got the ability to see that information? And again, another framework reference kind of model. But every vendor I talk to about either or both of these are like, yeah, let's get together. I'm going to see what you're doing. The industry needs this. So I'm equally excited about that too.
We need to think very carefully about, and be very intentional about how we build software. Just because we've collapsed everything to 10 days now doesn't mean that that's the right approach to take. We should think really carefully about what we build.
Our new unit of measure in software.
10 days, yes.
and by the way, huge kudos to you too. Brad's been peer review and contributor to helping me with the Agent Control Plane framework and getting that in place. So just like Fernando Montenegro was with the observability framework.
Oh,
so
thanks,
observability native. Appreciate it. This is the fun part of one of the biggest fun parts about doing this is the funnerest parts is collaborating on stuff.
Nice.
I'm still working through 10 days. I'm not quite
that
past
word
10 days.
using there. I appreciate the word usings. Yes.
I have lots of good words.
All the best.
All the best. Absolutely. Well, I think we've more than overstayed our welcome. At least I know I have.
This was a long one, wasn't it?
Still in good graces. We had a lot to say.
Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. If those of you who are here, thank you very much. We appreciate you. We do.
And if you don't listen to all of it, we'll carve it up into 3 different episodes next time. So you'll listen to it in an A, B, and C episode 10 or whatever it is now. So we'll do that. But not to belabor the point. Thanks so much for sticking with us, whether you stayed for 10 minutes or 20 or 50. We're glad that you're here with us, and we appreciate the opportunity to share with you and talk with you about what we're doing. We always want to hear from you. Reach out to us at agentsofdev@futurumgroup.com. Brad's research is available at futurumgroup.com/Brad-Shimon, as well as mine at Mitch-Shimon, as well as all the other analysts at first name - last name at Futurum Group. And be sure and subscribe, follow, share with your friends. Tell us what you don't like. If you think we're like spending way too much time talking about, ERD diagrams from, 1982, okay, that's fine. You can tell us that too.
We won't listen to you, but we appreciate that feedback.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We're not going to do that. But thank you so much for the feedback. Snarkity snark. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks again for being part of Agents of Dev. Thanks to our producer, Corey. Man, you are number one tops in the biz, and our audiovisual team for making this happen. We'll see you all next time on Agents of Dev.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to our blockbuster Predict 2026. As I've said before in some of the other sessions, when I originally envisioned Predict as a virtual event 8 or 9 years ago now, I always wanted to have it chock full of analysts that would be making their predictions based upon their analysis and reasoning, and that we'd be able to look back year in and year out and see exactly what came to be and what did it. Well, now as part of Futurum, of course, we're lucky enough to have the Futurum analyst or advisory services group. And our next Futurum analyst is one of my best friends at that Futurum advisory team. We've known each other, at least online, for many, many years. Let me introduce you to Fernando Montenegro. Fernando runs the cybersecurity practice. I'm sure he has a full title, but in my mind, Fernando runs the cybersecurity practice at Futurum. Fernando, my friend, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you.
It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and I adore every interaction we have. So this is perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. And feeling is mutual. Fernando, just to set the record straight, what is your official title?
So the official title is VP and Practice Lead, Cybersecurity and Resilience, right?
Excellent.
And there's a signal there, right? In the context that we did add resilience to the practice because, and we'll get to it on the predictions, right? But it is a foundational element of a modern, of what ails a modern cybersecurity team. So
agreed.
High up there.
Agreed. I've seen it. We're going to get into it, but I've seen that evolution from prevention to response to resilience. And I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. But before we do, let's start at the macro level. Let's go 500,000 feet up here.
Yep.
2020, as we look ahead to 2026, you can't look ahead without understanding where you've been. 2025 has been in so many ways a watershed year. I've said it, in my mind, in many ways, 2025 is the first year of the 21st century. Up to this point, we've lived on things that happened or were invented or envisioned, right, in the 20th century, the internet, the cell phone, all of these things. But clearly, we are in kind of uncharted waters, heading out here where no person has gone before. Who knows what's going to be? But let's just cut to the chase on this, right? If you read the mainstream press, even some of our own press, even some of our own stuff that we put out here on Techstrong,
Yep.
It sure does seem like there's a bubble out there. right? The valuations, the money's pledged, the way the money is being kept in a small circle round and round here. It can't, it just, I've been around too long and I've seen too much to buy into the new paradigm, the new reality that this isn't going to happen this time. I've seen it before.
Well, they say, right, the four most dangerous words in investing. This time it's different, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that as we approach 2026, here we are, and we're recording just before it. It's a Happy New Year, everyone. I think that one of the things very fresh on my mind is that the talk of an AI bubble has grown significantly through 2025, and I don't know when we'll see the adverse consequences, but again, we're expecting some sort of adjustment at some point. What that's going to look like, I leave it more to the financial analysts. What I will say, though, is that we are, when that comes, I hope that we have learned from the AI winters of before, right? I'll pick a bone with you a bit in that AI is actually a 20th century technology. It just became a 21st century.
You know what? You won't argue. My friend John Willis actually put out a book about the history of AI.
Oh my God!
A lot of it,
he's awesome. I gotta find the book. But
it did. It has its roots.
It has its roots, and way back when, in the early 80s, early 90s, we lived through an AI winter. Right, we tried a lot of things and it didn't work, and then here we are, and then the story is super interesting. Here we are now with at the forefront of LLMs improving and whatnot. Looking to 26, what I'm expecting is, I think that 25 was the year where, okay, we know that we can apply some of these things to security, right? 26 is the year where we do more of it. But in 26, one of the things I'm really excited about is that we are seeing a recognition from the market, and I think we'll see much more of it into 26, that is much more about being efficient with AI. And efficiency with AI comes in two forms. The one that is super important, but it's still being developed a lot more, is this notion of what are the things that LLMs can do really well, what are the things that some more reasoning models can do, what are the things that it can't do, and what are the alternatives that we have for the things it can't do. I want people to look up and follow the what's going on around neurosymbolic AI. Right, which is this notion of mixing the capabilities of large language models with the formal reasoning that we've known in symbolic logic, like for decades, right? Which was the original AI, if you will, right? And so I think that I would call out people, pay attention to neurosymbolic AI and formal reasoning, right? Just name dropping here, the work that AWS is doing, Byron Cook over at AWS and his team is really interesting. They've been working on formal reasoning for the longest time, and they've been developing things. So I think that we are going to see much more attention to this. How do we actually understand the reasoning behind AI output? That's one. The other one is we are going to see a little bit more around optimization of those models, right? It's wildly inefficient to ask a high performance reasoning model to just do a little bit of IP enrichment, right? To make API calls to the API. That's not sustainable.
Overkill.
Right? So I expect we'll see much more focus on these other models. And I hope that 2026 is the year where we're going to see a lot more around the actual outcomes of security enhanced by AI. So all the AI SOCs of the world, right? the concept came to mind in 25, right? We are seeing different approaches. There's dozens of companies working on the space, plus the larger vendors. I'm expecting 26 to be the year where we start to see more actual deployments and actual benefits from those things. That's on the positive side. There's the negative side of AI, which is I don't want to use the word terrified because that's too hyperbolic, but I am seriously concerned that as a society, we are about to be hit with an influx of challenges to how we think about the world. And I'm thinking here about deepfakes, right? It's interesting. Do you remember, I have my kids are in their like teens and 20s now, but I remember 10, 15 years ago, there used to be a really cute app that the Santa tracker that you could do. Right.
Sure.
It was an app that said, "Oh, here's."
But the interesting thing about it was from NORAD.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and they did the Santa tracker, which was awesome. But then later there were the apps, or there were the websites where you could put the kid's name, and then Santa would say, "Hello, kid name.
I'm about to fly over." Yes.
Yeah, I'm about to fly over your town. Right. So that's cute, right? I just saw a deepfake video this week that blew my mind in the context of it had to do with the selfie and movie actors. The same guy taking a selfie with the Star Wars crew, then switching it around and showing the Lord of the Rings crew, and then the Matrix. And I love movies, of course, and so that really cool deepfake. But oh my God, we are not ready for this, and we're not ready for this not because people are going to fake. Not just they're going to fake a high-profile celebrity, but society is built on trust. And I challenge people, myself included, to find the difference between a good deep fake and not. Of course, if I'm being asked, "Oh, is this a good deep fake?" Right? Somebody's going to look in more detail and whatnot. But on the day-to-day stuff, right? We are. This is going to be really, really interesting to see this industrialization of the erosion of trust. There's a quote by Edward Wilson, the biologist, sociobiologist, and he said that the greatest problem of humanity is that we have Paleolithic brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. Right? It is
What
so
a great
true.
quote.
Right.
Absolutely.
We are going to have
Absolutely.
so 26 it will be the year where deepfakes make even more inroads than before. Sorry, I didn't. I
don't
pessimistic
disagree.
side, but
Look, personally, I play with Sora.
Yeah.
And I've been using some Sora videos on some of my Shimmy Says stuff. It has me walking the floors of AWS reInvent when I never went down to the show floor. It has me, as a football coach. It had all kinds of things that are just crazy. But, when I look at what we just discussed, Fernando, I want to wrap it up, tie the bow on for our audience.
Sure.
We called this section the bubble in the brain.
Yeah.
And clearly, you could have a financial bubble. Doesn't mean the technology underlying it is bad.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. You're
the
absolutely
technology is real and getting more real and better. The expectations of the financial industry, to a certain extent, have created the conditions for the bubble. But the technology absolutely works and it's there. But you told a couple of great examples and stories here, Fernando. My question to you for 2026 is, can we keep up the pace? Can the technology keep up with the storytelling? These deep fakes are scary. It's scary. And you and I, look, I would consider you and I relatively tech-savvy people.
Absolutely.
What about the rest of us?
Absolutely.
What about the rest of the folks out here?
Absolutely. And this is where I call upon the security industry more broadly, right? Our mission is to help organizations with trust. So we need to be aware of this, and this is something that we need to handle, not necessarily through a deeper technology solution. But we have, I keep saying that one of the things about AI is that AI should be teaching us all to be business process engineers. We should all be analyzing how we do things. I'm doing that in my practice as an analyst. Where we do things, where does AI fit, where doesn't it fit, and so on and so forth. And I say the same thing for trust and verification, right? And there's an army of people working in anti-fraud who are well aware of this, and are doing this in the context of how do you know your client in banking, right? How do you help, like how are you doing voice prints on IVRs and whatnot, right? But I caution us that this needs to flow down to how you do help desk authentication, right? How do you do package delivery? How do we do remote web calls, right? I think it will be a challenge for us, right? And the challenge will be answered not just with technology, but with business process understanding as well.
Yes. Fernando, I'd love to discuss just this with you for the whole half hour, but we don't have time. I want to move on to the next segment that we want to discuss, called Agents and the Ball of Fire. So now the ball of fire, let's get that out of the way first. The ball of fire actually would give credit where credit's due. It comes from F5.
Yes. So F5 came up with the term years ago, and I love it, right? It's the idea that the modern application it's not the old data centers where we used to do external router, firewall, internal router, DMZ, in like application. No. It's a mishmash of APIs calling other APIs, calling a SaaS service hosted on a cloud, fronted on a content distributor, with code running on a content delivery network, right? Running on the edge, and so that's the idea of the ball of fire, right? And I think it's perfect. I love that, and I love that visual. Right?
It really is, and look, I grew up in the Molten Castle era, right, which is what you described here, and the cloud changed that forever, but now, in an age of agentic AI, and of course, everyone says 2026 will be a year of agentic AI and agents. Man, we remember the old Jericho Forum, the deperimeterization?
Yes, absolutely.
Right? We don't have a perimeter. We don't have the Molten Castle. We don't have a DMZ. Well, what do we have?
So it's super interesting you brought up the Jericho Forum, because we hear it all the time now. Identity is the new perimeter.
Yes.
Excuse me. Identity has been the new perimeter since the Jericho Forum, right? Actually, if I'm not mistaken, the term about the expression identity is the new perimeter, the first time we came across it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So we've actually, now it actually is.
But now it's true. I mean, look, I'll tell you my personal feeling. Identity was the killer security app of cloud security, right? Identity and access control became the killer security app for cloud, because it was all we had, right? We no longer had the perimeter. We no longer had the router, the firewall, the IPS.
By design, which is exactly what we want, right? So we're now just extending it to agentic workloads. And we have all sorts of interesting ramifications from that. So the 2026 trend / prediction is that we are going to see advancements on we're going to see advancements both in terms of deployment, right? Whether it's centered on stuff like Microsoft's Entra ID, whether it's other technologies or other vendors, right? We will see this formalization around agentic identity. And the important thing here is that I go back to business. I sound like a broken record. I go back to business process engineering, right? In the context that in a world where we have the ball of fire technology stack, right? A vulnerability, an organization's vulnerability is not necessarily just the technical, hey, I'm behind on my patches and somebody can do can exploit the technical vulnerability and run over a buffer and do something. The vulnerability is the misconfiguration and the access control, right? And that is what is allowing people through. It's so in that world, what we need to do as security professionals is, okay, how well do we understand which identities we have, right? How are those identities interacting with other elements, on that ball of fire, right? Where do permissions come in? How well is that process governed? How responsive is it to change? How responsive is it to scale, right? If I have 500 agents, do I need, how do I refer to them? Do I refer to them as agents 1 through agent 500? Or is that pool of agents one instance because they all do the same thing, right?
Isn't it Agent Smith, like from the Matrix?
I always wondered, right? If you think about the Matrix, how did the Matrix? I mean, Agent Smith was his name in relation to the Matrix, to what people saw there. How did the Matrix keep track of the multiple instances of Agent Smith? Right.
Well, were they ephemeral? Were they persistent? How does it relate? I mean, look, Fernando, we could do a whole session on that. And the Matrix and its relevance to today's agentic AI.
Well, yes, and I mean, it was a landmark movie, right? So yeah,
but I got to tell you the truth. I never thought of this when we were watching that.
Oh, absolutely not. Yes.
But here's my point though. And please, my security friends, don't hate on me for this. We're hanging on by our fingernails, right? Just with human identity issues. And then we added APIs and Kubernetes and containers and machine identities and artificial identities. And now you're saying, hold on. We're going to 10x that with the amount of agentic identities we're going to need to manage and work into APIs and MCP servers and all of these things. Who are we kidding? Are we remotely capable of managing this, Fernando, in the coming year?
This is one of the areas where I'm positive, in the sense that you brought up cloud, right? I remember when we first started on cloud, the amount of information around it was relatively sparse, right? Mm-hmm. People were experimenting with it. With AI, I am blown away by the amount of information that the community has rallied around, right? There are OWASP top 10 for agentic, for LLMs. There is guidance from NIST. There is guidance from SANS. There's guidance from CSA, right? Everybody. So we have the right. I think that the security community has realized that we need this, right? The question becomes, how do we see the forest for the trees, right? Is it worth for each organization diving down into the finer points of MCP and A2A when, yes, you're going to deploy agentic at some point, but you have a massive problem with over provisioning or over permission systems already, and should you fix that first, right? And so I'm optimistic. I think there is plenty of technology out there that's doing the visibility, the blocking of the right sizing of permissions and so on. The question is, how well does that stuff work at scale? How well does that stuff work in the world of the ball of fire, right? Because things are beautiful inside the moat, but the world is different.
But there's chaos out there, right? How does it work? And how do you add parentheses chaos?
Yes.
You know what? It's an interesting question. You're optimistic. We'll come back to it, but we've got to keep moving, Fernando. I want to move to our next segment. Buying dynamics.
Yes.
The conversation around the reality of platforms, if you will.
So this is super interesting because in this world where we currently are, there is of course a dichotomy. There is this conflict between, am I buying a platform? Am I buying point products? By the way, I tend to prefer framing the discussion as platform versus point product, not platform versus best of breed, because you can have a best of breed platform just as you can have a good enough security product, right? If you really want to be complex about it, there's a third dimension, which is in-source versus outsource, right? To build by versus have someone run free. And we are just about to publish, I think when people listen to this, we'll have published our cybersecurity decision maker data collected in the second half of 25, fourth quarter. And the data shows two things. The data shows that people maintain a preference for vendor consolidation and platforms, right? So we still, but it's not absolute, right? We're not saying, oh, there's only going to be a single platform, right? No, that's not but there is a preference for platforms. And the responses indicate a preference, a slight preference for buying more point products in this edition of the survey than it did the first one, right? And the way we're looking into this is that we think that we're seeing people open to the idea of point products for these frontier areas, I need something here. Now, of course, all the platform vendors are smart enough and they are adding those capabilities. We saw a shopping spree, particularly in the end of the third quarter of 25. Checkpoint was picking up, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Palo picked up before, right? All the little AI companies, right? So AI security companies. So we're seeing this notion of people indicate they prefer platforms. They are open to buying. They are open to buying point products in some selected areas. The key message here, though, is like when we look at the data and people ask, okay, what's troubling you? What do you want out of your security stack? Of course, number one is we want to address the threats that we have and so on. Number two on that list is integration. It's too complex to get everything together. So whether you have a platform or whether you have a point product, right, the end result must be that whatever you bring to market must integrate into someone's environment well enough, right? Whether that be you're taking in telemetry, whether that be you're taking in identity, whether that be you're using a standard for data output, whatever it is, right? But the reality of platforms is, yes, platforms, but they must be open enough to be integrated.
Yes. You know, whenever I think about the platform versus point, I'm reminded of a series of conversations I had with Chris Hoff.
Oh, God, it's amazing. Yes.
Yes. Back in the NAC days, when Still Secure, my company, was one of the leading NAC vendors, we got into this riff around product versus feature. Because my experience, Fernando, is today's point products are tomorrow's features in the platform.
Fair.
Right?
Fair.
And so it is just, when we look at these point products, we're looking at them because the temperature hasn't yet allowed them to turn to ice or gas. They're still liquid. But at some point, the physics change and it becomes part of a platform.
And absolutely 100%. And I applaud the founders and the entrepreneurs who navigate this conversation, because on one hand, they have to navigate the conversation of making their product relevant enough to be bought in the market. So you find product market fit, right? But at the same time, you have to architect it so that it can either grow into a platform yourself or be acquired into one. So it's a really interesting conversation. Sorry, I know we can talk about this.
Yeah, no, and we are running low on time, but one more thing I want to mention to you and your comment on, are we already seeing this with some of the buys you mentioned there? Everything, from the CyberArk to the little AI tuck-ins, if you will, that we're seeing these companies make. Are they already taking these point products and tucking them into the platform?
I think that this is what the platform vendors have known to do extremely well for the longest time. Cisco has been phenomenal at acquisitions forever. Palo Alto has been very good at acquisitions. Right? CrowdStrike and SentinelOne are getting their reps in as well. I mean, they're newer, of course, right? CyberArk is slightly different because it's Palo Alto's largest acquisition by far. So but they've perfected the tuck-in game really, really well. So I expect to see, and we've seen others, like we mentioned F5 acquired into AI as well, right? So we've seen this corp dev motion of acquiring tuck-ins and doing it well enough. I think that we're hitting a stride there, right? The question for the platforms become, okay, how do you incorporate them into your platform in a way that preserves the velocity of the feature development without getting bogged down into everything else around the platform?
Excellent. I got to keep us moving. We're low on time, and this last segment I want to make sure we hit.
Yep.
Resilience in the boardroom. Very important.
Oh my God. And so we called it out as a major trend for 26 on account of, again, the force function from AI in the context that AI is touching the business, security is touching the business much more present, right? And that also means visibility from senior leadership on how we're going to do this. How do we quantify the risk of AI, right? So we really expect to see some movement around cyber risk quantification, right? There have been many vendors who have been fine-tuning their offerings around risk, just as a reference, not as an endorsement. Like, I mean, Qualys has done a lot around their risk platform, right?
Rock.
Yeah. And we're seeing others as well. So that's one side of the conversation. The other side of the conversation is that boards and senior leaderships were already worried about one other thing. And they were worried about ransomware, right? Because let's not forget, cybersecurity doesn't stop just because AI is busy, right? Ransomware has been a phenomenal threat over the past 15 years, give or take, right? 15? No, perhaps, give or take, right? I think the brain virus was even earlier, yes. But the thing about ransomware is that it's been foundational in terms of how do you handle data protection, right? So one of the things we've observed over the years has been the evolution of data protection vendors, backup and recovery, right? Dive deep into cybersecurity. Here we have Veeam and Commvault and now Rubrik and others, right? And what we're seeing here is that they acquired capabilities to tackle ransomware as a use case, right? So you have quick recovery, you have clean room recovery, you have assisted by AI, right? You have much more efficient snapshots and all those things. Now we're seeing those vendors move further into data security, right? We saw acquisitions, right? So Rubrik with Laminar before, Commvault with Satori, and Veeam with security just recently, right? So this signals that they are moving closer to a data security platform, right? So I think that we'll see significant messaging and I think movement around that area. How do you securing data gets platformatized as well, right? I'm curious to see. I mean, Sierra is a large name in this space as well, right? So we'll see, right? I think that there is the two areas around governance is this resilience aspect, And then the risk quantification. The other thing I want to bring up here, bringing the ball of fire again, is that how do you do governance when your supply chain is so immensely complex? Here, I'll call out two things. One is, how do you handle third-party risk as third-party risk management? The other is software supply chain security. Our good friend Mitch Ashley is a master at this, and he and I collaborate on supply chain security. Right, that's another area that we're really interested into 26. And I know we're running on time.
Interesting. Yeah. When I look at ransomware in 2024, truthfully, it was a lot scarier in 2024 than it is in 2025, and it will be in 2026. I think we've made actual progress. We've gotten smarter about ransomware.
I think we're accepting it. I think that we've gotten so that again, this whole resilience and governance thing is a whole trend on its own. We can spend an hour on this alone. One of the things we're watching very carefully is how are cyber insurers playing a part in this. Right.
Well, they drive, especially in ransomware, they drive a lot.
They drive a lot. But what I bring this up because I think that we are learning to handle it as an incident.
We operationalized it,
yes.
if you will.
Yeah, so
I agree. Yeah. But here's the thing about resilience. I think resilience is a lot closer to the language that business speaks. I think resilience is something that businesses understand inherently, where they don't understand the bits and bytes of ransomware or AppSec or even software supply chain security.
At some level of the business, nor should they, right?
Right.
There are, so this is the other thing that drives a lot of our research, which is how is cybersecurity management changing, right? And we are, as we get closer to the business, what changes in the language that we do, right? At the same, what changes in, dare I say, the political games within an organization, right? Who reports into the CISO? Who does the CISO report to? How much pull does the CISO have in dictating what engineering should be doing or what finance should be doing? And vice versa, like where does that responsibility fit, right? And I think that it varies for each organization, right? It's one other area to continue watching is how do we change our management practices? But again, another hour on this alone.
Absolutely. And we're already in overtime, but I'm not stopping us now.
Well,
We won't stop now. But Fernando, I do want to move to our closing beat. And that's the one thing, right? I'm big fan Billy Crystal. I don't know if you remember that movie with Curly. Jack Palance plays Curly. City
Slickers.
City Slickers.
Yes.
Jack Palance always says, just one thing, just one thing. So I'm going to ask you the one thing. We've covered a lot here. Our folks watching this on Predict, what's that one thing they need to take with them?
The one thing is you need to make your decisions based on a realistic threat model. And that you need to make your decisions on that realistic threat model. And what goes into that threat model is what the secret sauce is, right? What goes into that threat model is where is AI right now and where is AI going? Where are the adversaries right now and where are they going? Where is our organization right now and where are we going? What are the constraints that we have? What are the regulations that are coming down the pike, right? What are the things that we need to, like, what does that ball of fire, right? Even an even bigger ball of fire, right? That ball of fire is usually technology, right? What does the ball of fire, what's the ball of fire surrounding the ball of fire in terms of the regulatory? So I think that the one thing is manage things according to an up-to-date and realistic threat model, right? I know it's a kind of a cop-out, but that's the only way we're going to get through this, right?
I agree. As Curly said, just one thing. Fernando, we're out of time. We're over time. My friend, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for appearing in this year's edition of Predict. We'll look forward to see how this plays out over the coming weeks and months. Of course, we'll have the benefit of having you nearby to continue the discussion.
It is an honor, my friend. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you in person and remotely throughout the year.
Absolutely. And again, if you want to follow Fernando and see what his writings and not prediction, well, he does predictions here, but the research and reporting that he does, you can go to the futurumgroup.com website and look it up there. Unlike a lot of analyst firms, most of the content there is not even behind a reg wall or a paywall. You can go download it and read it for yourself and reach out to Fernando and the rest of the Futurum analysts on that. But for now, on behalf of Fernando Montenegro and myself, thank you for joining us in our cybersecurity section for Predict 2026. We've got a lot more coming your way, so enjoy. Also, I should mention, in our exhibitor booth area, the Futurum Group does have an area set up, I believe, where you could download a lot of the latest research from Fernando and his colleagues. So check that out. We've got more coming on Predict. Check it out.